Chapter 6:23. Thunder God Berserk thought that Moonless Thunder had some brilliant idea. Who knew that the reason Moonless Thunder said that something was wrong was that Chuanjin and his group had extorted too little. If this wasn't despicable, then what was it? After being mocked by Thunder God Berserk, Moonless Thunder also felt that he was a little despicable. Come to think of it, although Chuanjin was greedy, he was a man of his word. Perhaps he was actually kind by nature? Thinking of this, the uneasiness in Moonless Thunder's heart vanished like smoke in thin air. Half an hour later, Thunder God Berserk arrived outside the library with a large group of people. At that time, the prerequisite mission for the Atlan City Key was organized by Fish Watcher Underwater. Now, the Atlan City Key mission was directly distributed to all the Unity Alliance players who had participated in the prerequisite mission. Apart from Fish Watcher Underwater, Thought Luyun, and the Unity Alliance players who were stuck at the Resurrection Point, the majority of the Unity Alliance players who had missions on them had joined Sky Wrath Berserk. Currently, there were close to 400 of them. One Heart Alliance was also a large guild in Thunderstorm City. Although the players of One Heart Alliance were not as elite as the players of Skylaw Berserker, they were still considered to be above-average experts among the many players of Rebirth. Moreover, those who were dragged by watching fish under the water to do a quest were definitely not ordinary people. Thunder God Berserk had chosen the 200 players with the best equipment and skills among the 400. It could be said that he was striving for perfection. "Io, not bad. You're quite spirited." Seeing that the Berserk Heavenly Punishment had gathered enough people, the people from the Quan Zhen sect leisurely walked out of the library. Each of them was like a military parade, smiling at the people from the Berserk Heavenly Punishment. F***ck, why is it them? Seeing Chuanjin's group, the atmosphere instantly exploded. On Thunderstorm City's side, the players who had fought alongside Chuanjin's group and led Thunder God Berserk's group only numbered 20 to 30. Now, most of them still treated Chuanjin as an enemy. As the saying goes, when enemies come face to face, their eyes turn red. These players had suffered at the hands of Chuanjin many times. Now that they saw Chuanjin's group, all of them simultaneously pulled out their weapons and were on guard. Someone even said, "Boss Thor, do you not trust us? Are you going to hand in your testimonies?" Hearing everyone's discussion, Berserk Thunder said, "What proof of allegiance? We have to follow these guys into dungeons and do quests." Follow them to the instance dungeon? Everyone was in an uproar again. F***ck, aren't these B***cheese our enemies? I was killed by them twice, and I even lost my Thunder Pearl. I've also died twice. That's right. If they want us to dungeon with them, then return our equipment first. You guys are nothing. I've died 3 times, and that idiot Violent Thunder has died 4 times. Berserk Heavenly Thunder didn't forget to pull Violent Thunder's heart. Violent Thunder's heart had a look of despair on his face. Thunder Boss is mighty. Wild Thunder Boss is rippling. If you don't return the equipment, we won't continue the dungeon. F***ck, don't add to the mess. Seeing his subordinates like this, Berserk Thunder's head was about to explode. Meow, it was good enough that these bastards from Chuanjin didn't scam people. Wasn't it just a fantasy to expect them to return the equipment? Just as Berserk Thunder was about to go crazy, Moonless Thunder stepped forward to smooth things over, saying, "Everyone, don't argue. Everyone should know what happened before. It has nothing to do with us, and the bosses of Chuanjin are innocent of being hunted down. Everything was planned by watching fish underwater. Now that we are all brothers, I hope that everyone can let bygones be bygones." Ah yes, what Moonless said is exactly what I wanted to say. Berserk Thunder God echoed from the side. At the same time, he thought to himself, why didn't I think of that? Haha, I couldn't tell that Moonless Thunder's reaction was fast enough. Wang Yu laughed. It had to be said that Moonless Thunder was indeed an expert at shifting the blame. He casually threw Guogua onto watching fish underwater. Wuji said, "In any case, watching fish underwater has enough aggro. It doesn't itch when there are too many lice, so it doesn't matter." "That's true." Wang Yu nodded. However, at this moment, someone in the group said, "The Thunder Pearl is my level 30 graduation equipment. You can't return the other equipment, but you have to return the Thunder Pearl." "That's right. And that plus 20 lightning attribute ring of mine. It's also a top-tier item that can be used for a lifetime. You have to at least return it to me." "About that." Moonless Thunder turned his head to look at the Chuanjin members, and they all looked at Mingdu. Ming covered the ring on his right hand with his left hand and turned his head to look at the scenery around him, ignoring everyone's gaze. When Moonless Thunder saw that Mingdu had no intention of returning it, he could only helplessly say, "Don't worry, everyone. This instance dungeon we're in is a high-level instance dungeon. There are many good items inside. How about we give them to you first?" After saying that, Moonless Thunder turned back to look at Wuji. The distribution of equipment was in the hands of the team leader, so Moonless Thunder still had to listen to Chuanjin's opinion. "I don't have any objections, but I'm not the team leader," Wuji said, spreading his hands. "Then what does Boss Mingdu think?" Moonless Thunder wiped his sweat and asked Mingdu. The proof was in Mingdu's hands. Other than Mingdu, the team leader could not be anyone else. "Don't tell me this son of AB*TCH is the team leader?" When they saw that the team leader was Mingdu, everyone went berserk again. There were many mages in Thunderstorm City, but Chuanjin only had one mage. During the guerrilla warfare in the forest, most of the people had died at the hands of Mingdu, and the majority of the equipment that everyone had dropped had also been hung on Mingdu's body. Now that they saw that the team leader was this brat, how could they not be angry? "Boss Mingdu, the will of the people cannot be disobeyed," Moonless Thunder continued. "All right, then I'll reluctantly do it." Mingdu sighed, disappointment written all over his face. Seeing that Mingdu had relented, the players finally settled down. Then, Mingdu opened the team and changed the distribution mode from the team leader's distribution mode to distribution according to need. Only then did heavenly punishments people begin to enter the team. Wang Yu rubbed his chin and asked Wuji, "Do you think we've been tricked by Moonless Thunder?" Wuji smiled faintly and said, "Not at first, but later on." These players' opinion of Chuanjin was definitely not fake. Moonless Thunder was only taking the opportunity to ask for some benefits from Chuanjin. This little trick could not even be hidden from Wang Yu, so naturally, it could not be hidden from Wuji. "Then why did you let Mingdu change the mode?" "It's not your style," Wang Yu said, puzzled. Wuji laughed mischievously and said, "Hee, no matter how low-level a scammer's methods are, there will always be people who fall for it. It's because he has enough temptation. If these guys don't feel that there's a profit to be made, who would obediently be led by the nose by you?" Chapter 624. Once everything was ready, the group once again set out for the undead city. This time, it was the undead town. With the lesson from last time, Thunder God Berserk even instructed his subordinates to keep a low profile and not cause any trouble. However, because Undead Town had been demoted, it was in a mess. There was no one in the leveling area. The party arrived at the entrance to the Nether Sea at the pier without any mishaps. Due to the opening of Atlan City, the large swamp under the pier had disappeared, and the entrance had become a black whirlpool emitting a putrid stench. The whirlpool was bottomless and extremely terrifying. "Is this the entrance?" Thunder God Berserk asked in surprise. Other than Wang Yu and the others, only the golden spears and armored horses had jumped into this entrance. Thunder God Berserk had died long ago and had never seen it before. Now that he saw the entrance, which looked like it was about to devour someone, he could not help but feel a little guilty. Mingdu looked at Thunder God Berserk with disdain and jumped in first. Immediately after, everyone received the notification that they had entered the instance dungeon. That's not right. We've entered the instance dungeon. That's not how we entered last time, Wang Yu said with a frown. According to the original process, they should have entered the Nether Sea first before activating the instance dungeon. This time, they had actually entered the instance dungeon by jumping in. When the others heard this, they all looked at Wang Yu in shock, as if they had discovered something extraordinary. The Chuanjin members were embarrassed. They had all forgotten that Wang Yu was a gaming noob. He did not even know such common knowledge as the difference between a quest dungeon and a normal dungeon. Seeing Wang Yu's timidity, Wuji wiped away his sweat and explained, "There's nothing to be surprised about. It's just like Yu Huiqing's faction dungeon. There are still many differences between the instance dungeon and the setting." "Oh, so that's how it is. How interesting," Wang Yu mumbled. The Berserk Divine Punishment players were even more confused. They could not help but discuss, "Isn't Chuanjin full of experts? How did an idiot sneak in?" "It's normal to be an idiot. I heard that most of the Chuanjin members are mentally ill." As they spoke, the scene changed and everyone followed Mingdu into the dungeon. However, after entering the dungeon, everyone was dumbfounded, including the members of Chuanjin who had already entered the dungeon once. At this time, Atlan City was no longer the dilapidated ruins at the bottom of the Nether Sea. In its place was an incomparably bustling, large-scale main city. Above their heads was no longer the gloomy waters of the Netherworld Sea, but the vast blue sky and white clouds. From the layout of the city, Atlan City was much larger than the largest main city of the Light faction, Holy Light City. The various buildings in the city were much grander than Holy Light City. Atlan City faced the sea and was built against the mountains. Behind it was a majestic and continuous mountain range. No one was unfamiliar with it. It was the Lawrence Mountains. At this time, there was no Ironrock Fort or Thunderstorm City. It seemed that this was the Atlan City of ancient times. System notification: you have discovered Atlan City and obtained XX EXP. Say, where is this? It feels so condescending, Wuji asked Wang Yu after looking around. Everyone was currently on a very high platform. The platform was as big as a plaza and was surrounded by a circle of magic altars. Seeing the colorful pillars of light shooting into the sky from the magic altars, Wang Yu immediately reacted. "This is the Elemental Tower." "Elemental Tower?" Wuji frowned slightly. "Isn't that nonsense? How did we get here?" The Elemental Tower did not have stairs. If players wanted to go down, they could only jump. From the surrounding environment, the platform was level with the Lawrence Mountains. The first thing everyone did after entering the dungeon was to jump off the cliff and commit suicide. What the hell was this? At this moment, there was a sudden roar in the sky. Everyone looked up and saw a huge flying saucer-like aircraft slowly descending from the sky and landing in front of them. F***CK, is that an alien? Seeing the flying saucer, everyone was shocked. To be able to encounter an alien while clearing a dungeon, even jumping off a cliff, was worth it. At the same time, the door of the flying saucer opened, and a handsome young man with a kind face walked out of the flying saucer. Everyone hurriedly cast a detection spell on him. Unsurprisingly, all they saw were question marks. After seeing everyone on the platform, the handsome man took out a dazzling staff and pointed it at them. He asked, "Are you people sent by God?" The handsome man's first question stumped everyone. From the background story, the NPCs of Atlan City were definitely hostile to God. However, this was the Atlan City of ancient times, and God had yet to act against Atlan City. They were likely still worshipping God, so whether they were sent by God was a question that no one dared to answer lightly. Say that they were sent by God? They might already be hostile to the theocracy. Wasn't this courting death? Don't look at the 200 people on their side. Whether it was the flying saucer or the staff in his hand, it was obvious that they were divine artifacts. If an NPC of this level flared up, more than 200 people would not be enough. Say that they were not sent by God? Damn it, they came to the Elemental Tower for no reason. It was obvious that they were up to no good. Just when everyone was at a loss, the leader, Mingdu, said carelessly, "Why should we tell you who we are? I don't even know you. Tell me who you are first." The handsome man was stunned when he heard that. He suddenly smiled and said, "I like people who ask questions. Unfortunately, this is a special time. I can't tell you who I am. You answer my question first, or I'll start." As he said that, the handsome man raised the staff in his hand. The originally clear sky suddenly became covered with dark clouds. Blue lightning rolled in the clouds above everyone's head, making crackling sounds. Everyone was scared and their faces turned pale. Damn, he could mobilize the power of heaven and earth with a wave of his hand. This guy was obviously a top-level NPC. He was probably not far from God. As for the so-called thunder and lightning spells of the players, compared to this guy, they were not much stronger than firecrackers. At this moment, Wuji walked up and asked with a smile, "You must be Reynolds. You know me?" The handsome guy was slightly surprised and asked in surprise. "Yes, I've heard of your name." Wuji nodded. Although Reynolds was young and handsome, the shape of his face and eyes were somewhat similar to the old man in the library. Coupled with the dazzling staff and deceptive words, Wuji immediately recognized him. "Since you know me, you're definitely not an enemy. Please tell me why you're here." Saying that, Reynolds snapped his fingers, and the dark clouds in the sky disappeared. Wuji was speechless. This Reynolds's standard for judging others was really strange. "I've been asked to help you," Wuji said. "I got it. Did the teacher invite you here?" Reynolds asked in surprise. Wuji smiled noncommittally and did not say anything. Chapter 625. The Army of God is Coming? Wuji finally understood that it was the eve of Atlan City's destruction. At the same time, it was not difficult to guess that their mission was most likely to help defend against the army's attack. Yes, according to the information transmitted by our scout Skyhawk, the army of the Vatican, led by the chief adjudicator Gully, is almost at the foot of the Lawrence Mountains, Reynolds replied. "Scout Skyhawk? What's that?" Moonless Thunder asked curiously. Reynolds pointed to the large birds circling in the sky. "That's the Scout Skyhawk. They're equipped with equipment enhanced with the Eagle's Eye spell, which can transmit what they see to our eyes. F*CK, a scout plane." Everyone was astonished when they heard this. As expected of the main city that had reached the pinnacle of magic and technology in ancient times. It was clearly a Western fantasy game, but the Atlantis had come up with something like a reconnaissance plane. This was too ridiculous. At this moment, Wuji was frowning inwardly. Atlan City was surrounded by mountains and rivers, easy to defend and difficult to attack. Logically speaking, the army of the Vatican should have come from the sea, but Reynolds said that the army of the Vatican was on the other side of the Lawrence Mountains. This was not right. Could it be that the Vatican's technology had also developed to the pinnacle? "Does the army of the Vatican have flying machines too?" Wuji asked. "The army of God is repelled by technology," Reynolds said. Wuji laughed. "What's there to be afraid of? They won't be coming over the Lawrence Mountains anytime soon. Keep your ignorance to yourself. That's the army of God. Not good, there's something over there." Reynolds had not finished speaking when Wang Yu suddenly pointed in the direction of the Lawrence Mountains and shouted. Everyone hurriedly looked up. They saw a blade of light shooting into the sky, followed by a loud rumble of mountains cracking. Then, a huge cloud of smoke shrouded the Lawrence Mountains. When the smoke dissipated, the eyes of all the players on the elemental tower popped out of their socket. There was now a gap in the originally endless mountain range. On the other side of the gap, a knight was floating in midair, his entire body emitting white light. Under his feet was an army in white armor, covering the ground in a snow-white color. Reynolds narrowed his eyes as he looked at the knight floating in the air. He said with slight surprise, splitting Mount Lawrence with a single strike. "Looks like this Gully is as difficult to deal with as the rumors say." "What? Split open? I thought it was blasted open by a magic crystal cannon. Hearing Reynolds's words, everyone took a closer look. Sure enough, the gap was very neat, as if it had been cut by a knife. It didn't look like it had been blasted open. Everyone's expression immediately turned ugly. Although everyone had their doubts about the so-called cleaving mountain range in one strike, the truth was right in front of them. They had no choice but to believe it. This kind of NPC should be a top-tier NPC, right? At the very least, he was no weaker than Reynolds, who could mobilize the power of heaven and earth. Was this really a level 60 dungeon, and not a level 200 dungeon? There's no magic crystal cannon that can blast open a mountain range in one shot. Moreover, the Templars are the staunchest believers of the Vatican. They wouldn't use this kind of thing, Reynolds said. Hearing this, Wang Yu's pupils shrank slightly. He cried out involuntarily, "Templars!" Wang Yu had been to Light Saint City before. He had even caused a ruckus there, so he had a particularly deep impression of these tin cans. These guys practiced both magic and martial arts. They could attack, resist, heal, and deal damage. They were basically all-round NPCs, even more so than ordinary mini-BOSSES. Back in Light Saint City, only a small team of low-level Templars had been able to beat the Eternal Silent Dawn Guild to a pulp. Now, there were more than 1,000 Templars on the other side of the gap. It was clear that this dungeon was not something that current players could attempt. No wonder it was an S-rank mission. It was indeed impossible to complete. At this moment, High Judge Gully, who was in mid-air, began to shout, "People of Atlan City, listen up. Although you've gone against the will of God, in consideration of God's mercy, as long as you stop your pointless research and destroy the so-called God of science and technology, we can— Hey, what's that grandson saying?" Mingdu asked impatiently. "It seems like he's trying to persuade us to surrender," Wang Yu said. "Oh, I think it's good to surrender. What about you guys?" Mingdu asked the crowd. "Damn, he still has the strength to talk nonsense after splitting open a mountain range." It was clear that he hadn't even used his full strength. Just these 200 small fries added together wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from him. Reynolds looked at Mingdu with an unfriendly expression. Wuji hurriedly pressed down on Mingdu's mouth and pushed him to the back. "Can you King stop talking? Alright, don't just stand there. Hurry up and get on the flying transport. I'll bring you guys down," Reynolds urged. "Stop fooling around. How many people can this crappy thing of yours fit?" Mingdu said disdainfully. Reynolds' flying transport was the size of an ordinary car. There were more than 200 people on the platform. If so many people squeezed into such a small flying transport, wouldn't they be squeezed to death? He might as well jump down now to his heart's content. Reynolds smiled faintly. "Just go ahead. There's plenty of space." Old Li, stop talking nonsense." Mingdu still wanted to say something, but Wang Yu grabbed the back of his neck and threw him in. Then, Chuanjin and the rest followed closely behind and boarded the flying transport. It had to be said that the flying transport was only the size of a car on the outside, but it was a completely different world on the inside. There was still space for more than 200 people to sit inside. After everyone had boarded, the old driver, Reynolds, steered the flying transport into the air. Wuji asked in puzzlement, "Teacher Reynolds, as far as I know, spatial magic can only place objects that don't have any life force. I like people who ask questions." Reynolds looked at Wuji appreciatively and said, "This isn't just magic, there's also technology." "Technology?" Wuji was stunned by Reynolds once again. "That's right. Space, time, matter, and spirit are the main components of the world. They are embodied in many aspects. Magic can only play a role. Only technology can explore the essence of creation. It's because we're studying these things that we're abandoned by the gods." Reynolds said, "I really don't understand why the gods can't face the development of technology." Wuji smiled bitterly. Because when you've thoroughly studied the origin of the world, you'll become gods. In the eyes of the gods, perhaps the world doesn't need more gods. Yes, I think you're right. I'm very happy to be able to talk to you. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. I'm also very honored to meet a scholar like you. Wuji put away his cynical attitude and said respectfully. Although Reynolds was only an NPC, the Atlan tribe's attitude toward technology exploration was very respectable. All right, we've arrived. After you get off the car, go to the plaza and look for the Great Elder. He'll assign you a mission. I'm going to meet that great adjudicator now. If I come back alive, I hope to have a drink or two with you, Reynolds said to Wuji. Chapter 626. Due to that earth-shattering strike, the residents of Atlan City took out their weapons and took to the street. Chuanjin and the others followed the direction Reynolds pointed and quickly followed the residents to the square in the city center. The square was filled with all kinds of people. The only similarity was that these people were armed to the teeth. Seeing the glittering equipment on these residents, all the players were drooling with envy. If not for the fact that they could not attack their own NPCs, someone would have attacked them. On the high platform in the center of the plaza, an old man with white hair and beard was speaking. The church's army is already at the gates. They want us to destroy the Atlan tribe's thousands of years of hard work. My children, do you have anything to say? We don't agree. No one knew who shouted, but everyone followed suit. We don't agree. Even God can't make us surrender. That's right. As expected of the people of Atlan. Unyielding blood flows in your veins. Foreigners, what about you? Do you want to live and die with our Atlan? After the great elder shouted, he turned his gaze to the players. All the residents looked at them with burning gazes. System notification. Do you want to assist the Atlan tribe? What if we say no? Mingdu asked cautiously. That's our enemy, the NPCs said in unison. F***CK, do we still have a choice? Of course, we're on your side. As the team leader, Mingdu righteously represented the players and said yes. System notification. Your team has accepted the instance dungeon mission, Descent of God's Punishment. Mission Level S Mission Objective. Assist the Atlan people in resisting the attack of the God's Punishment Army. Current mission completion. 0% mission hint. The Temple Knights are the most elite warriors of the Vatican. Each of them has the ability to fight 1 against 10. F***CK. Seeing the mission hint, everyone could not help but curse. The instance dungeon monsters' levels were much higher than the players. Now, these monsters had the ability to fight 1 against 10. Was this not a blatant scam? Of course, no one raised any objections to Bright City's declaration. Under such circumstances, no one dared to raise any objections. After all, choosing yes would only result in the possibility of being killed by the Temple Knights. If they chose no, they would definitely be killed by the Atlans. Boss Wuji, what should we do now? At this moment, Moonless Thunder walked forward and asked Wuji. Be it the difficulty or mode of this dungeon, Moonless Thunder had never encountered anything like this in Rebirth. He had no idea where to start. Wuji was the commander of this dungeon, so he naturally had to push the responsibility to Wuji. Wuji pointed at the gap made by Great Judge Guli and said coolly, "Go up the mountain." Guli's strength was enough, but his brain seemed to be a little flawed. Mount Lawrence ran across the continent and was a few thousand meters horizontally. With one slash from Guli's sword, the mountain peaks on both sides became a standard one-line sky terrain. This road was passable for normal people, but if it was used for marching and fighting, it would be extremely easy to be ambushed. It was a pure taboo for military strategists. Wouldn't it be too slow to go up the mountain and hide now? Moonless Thunder asked. Mount Lawrence was a few thousand meters above sea level. By the time they climbed to the top, the enemy might have already slaughtered Atlan City. Wuji sighed and said, Atlan City even has flying devices. How could they not have cable cars up the mountain? As he spoke, Wuji asked the Great Elder, "How do we usually go up the mountain?" The Great Elder pointed to a platform not far away and said, "That can take you up." As expected, the Atlans were so smart. How could they go up the mountain on foot? After everyone received the Great Elder's instructions, they climbed up the platform one after another. The Great Elder's walking stick tapped the ground a few times, and the platform floated steadily toward the top of the mountain. At this time, Reynolds had already brought Ghoulie to some unknown place for a duel. The Temple Knights did not wait for their commander to return but advanced forward on their own initiative. As the mountain range had been forcefully cut open, the mountain walls were very flat, and the mountain path was full of scattered rocks and trees. Therefore, it was very difficult to travel, and the speed of their advance was not fast. By the time Wuji led everyone to the top of the mountain, the Temple Knights had advanced no more than a few hundred meters. Speaking of which, Boss Wuji, we've avoided the knights below after climbing up the mountain, but our hands can't reach them, Thunder God Berserk said, puzzled. You've become stupid from playing games. Of course you can't reach them from this distance. Looking at the Temple Knights who were advancing slowly, Wuji gave Thunder God Berserk a disdainful look, and then directed the Berserk Heavenly Punishment members. Everyone, go and carry some rocks. Carry rocks? Don't tell me you're going to smash them with rocks? I've become stupid from playing games. Thunder God Berserk instantly understood. Accustomed to the calculation of attack distance in the game, Thunder God Berserk subconsciously thought that fighting was just throwing skills at each other. He had actually forgotten the most common sense. Everyone, quickly go and carry the rock. Thunder God Berserk, who had come to his senses, hurriedly ordered. Originally, the Berserk Heavenly Punishment members were extremely dissatisfied with Wuji. Now that their guild leader had given the order, they did not dare to be negligent. One by one, they went to carry the rocks. At that moment, Moonless Thunder suddenly said, "Boss Wuji, why don't I see anyone from Chuanjin?" At first, when there were a lot of people, Moonless Thunder did not notice. Now that everyone had gone to carry the rocks, and there were only a few people left, Moonless Thunder suddenly realized that something was wrong. When he gave the order just now, it was clearly stated that everyone would go up the mountain. However, at this moment, other than Wuji, there was not a single person from Chuanjin. Could it be that they had gone to carry the rocks? Don't be ridiculous. How could those people do such rough work? Therefore, Moonless Thunder was certain that the people from Chuanjin had not gone up the mountain. Oh them! Wuji calmly pointed to the end of the valley and said, "Do you see the entrance of that valley? That's the best place to set up an ambush." "Can they do it?" Moonless Thunder asked Wuji. "What do you know? There are so many people down there. With this terrain, one man can hold the pass against 10,000. There will definitely be no problem. Since I am the commander, you don't have to ask," Wuji said impatiently. Moonless Thunder continued asking, one last question. "Why did you send your people?" For some reason, seeing Wuji make such arrangements, Moonless Thunder felt especially guilty. Wuji looked at Moonless Thunder from the corner of his eyes and said with a fake smile, "Do you have to make it clear? I don't want to hurt your pride." Moonless Thunder was silent. Indeed, comparisons were odious. Compared to the people from Chuanjin, his so-called elites were just a joke. Chapter 627. Setting up an ambush at the foot of the mountain was Moonless Thunder's wishful thinking. Wang Yu and the others followed the team up the mountain. Other than Mingdu, who had to accept the quest, Chuanjin and the others didn't follow the team. They left the team as soon as they got off the aircraft. Although the players had the advantage of time and place, the Templars were different from ordinary level 60 monsters. Wuji wasn't confident that they could hold them off for a long time. However, one thing was certain. Regardless of whether the players were killed or the Holy Knights were killed, the people from the Quanzhen sect had to obtain the coordinates of the vanished land of the gods. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. If the Templars defeated the players, The Atlantis City Instance dungeon would fail and the quest would end. If the players defeated the Templars, Chuanjin's plan would be exposed. Berserk Heavenly Punishment had tens of thousands of players. They wouldn't be fooled like this. What Wuji needed to do now was to try his best to stall for time, so that Wang Yu and the rest could find the coordinates of the hidden God's land. At this moment, Wuji and his men were lying in ambush in the middle of the valley. The terrain was not as high as the mountain peak, but it was still about 100 meters in height. Looking down from above, the temple knights below looked like busy white ants, bumping their way over. Under Wuji's command, Berserk Heavenly Punishment's players collected everything that could be thrown down and piled them up at the edge of the cliff. There were too many things that could be thrown down from the mountain. Stones the size of millstones, wooden stakes that were half the height of a person, ice blocks the size of a person's head, and so on. All of these could basically kill a person on flat ground. In such a terrain, even an egg thrown from such a high place would be able to kill a person at the foot of the mountain. Everyone gathered firewood. Soon, the edge of the cliff was filled with ammunition. Should we let our brothers throw a bunch of things to test our firepower? Berserk Thunder God's OCD flared up when he saw so many things piled up at the edge of the cliff. Test my ass, Wuji said with disdain. Can't you see that they aren't here yet? If you alert them, what should we do if they don't move forward? Then what do we do? Thunder God Berserk asked restlessly. Let's wait. When all of them come to us, we'll give them a good time. Wuji stretched his body and said indifferently. Then, he leaned against a big rock. As soon as Wuji raised his head, he happened to see two black shadows entangled in the distant sky. Therefore, Wuji took out his glasses and put them on his nose calmly. The two black shadows were none other than Renault and Gully, the two big bosses. The two of them were currently throwing skills at each other. Although the skills looked beautiful, they were useless. After throwing them at each other for a long time, there was not a single scratch on their bodies. It seemed that the fierce battle between the two bosses was just a quest storyline. The battle between the two Skyline and Gully was just a system CG animation. However, when he saw the two fighting, Wuji felt a little uneasy. The system wouldn't arrange a CG animation here for no reason. These two would definitely be a variable in the quest. After nearly 6 or 7 minutes, the Templars finally slowly advanced to the area where everyone was lying in ambush. Moonless Thunder nudged Wuji and said, "Boss Wuji, their front line is almost in the middle of the valley. Should we open fire?" "No, let them pass first," Wuji said. "Are you kidding me? Why are we letting them pass?" Moonless Thunder asked in confusion. "This is called luring the enemy in. Do you understand?" Wuji said. "Are we just going to let them run? It's fine. Just now, Thunder brought a few dozen brothers to the front line to ambush. They won't be able to run," Wuji said. "Their team only has 1,000 people. The length of the team is less than 100 meters. Why are we stretching the front line so far?" Moonless Thunder wasn't an idiot. Although he hadn't fought a battle before, he had commanded 1,000 people before. Naturally, he knew a little about valley ambushes. They had fewer people on their side and the Templars had more people. Naturally, the more concentrated the firepower, the better. Pulling 200 people into a 1,000-meter front line was clearly disadvantageous to them. Of course, Wuji couldn't say that he wanted to make the battle last a little longer. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "There are benefits to having a long front line. You don't need to ask." But what? Did you forget that I'm the commander? If we really can't do it, then you can take command," Wuji said with some displeasure. "That's right. Moonless, why do you have so many questions? I just think that Boss Wuji's move is very clever." Thunder God Berserk saw that the conversation between the two wasn't very optimistic, so he hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Moonless Thunder only felt that this method of pulling the front line was somewhat inappropriate. If he really had to take command, he really wouldn't be able to do it. Now that he heard Thunder God Berserk say so, Moonless Thunder once again suppressed the doubts in his heart. Seeing Moonless Thunder's conflicted expression, Wuji once again urged on the guild channel, "Are you guys done yet? I can't hold on much longer. What are you rushing us for? We haven't found Regis yet," Mingdu replied impatiently when he saw Wuji's message. F***CK, you haven't even found him. What the F***CK have you been doing for so long? Wuji said anxiously. Their side had thrown away their pride in order to stall for time, yet they couldn't even find the main NPC on the other side. What the F***CK was there left to play? You can't blame Oldly for this. Regis seems to have vanished into thin air. We've asked everyone, and they all say they don't know where he is, Chunxiang said. When an ordinary player looked for an NPC, especially one of virtue and prestige like Regis, they could ask any NPC to give them directions. However, the residents of Atlan City actually had no idea where Regis was. It can't be so strange? Could it be that he knows we're looking for him, so he's hiding? Wuji said, puzzled. Bao San said, that Reynolds seems to have said that Regis is in seclusion. I think he should be staying in one of the residences. Residences? F***CK, don't tell me you're going to flip through all the residences in the city, Wuji said in despair. Atlan City was much larger than Light City. There were close to 1,000 residences of various sizes, and this did not include the cubicles and secret rooms in the residences. If they were to search one by one, they wouldn't be able to do anything else in the dungeon today. F***CK, isn't this a large-scale dungeon? Don't tell me those Templars aren't enough for you to defeat in one wave? To place one's pride shouted. Wuji said, I don't know what else is coming, but this wave of Templars will probably be over soon. Ambush tactics can only be used once. I'm afraid that after defeating the Templars, an even fiercer wave will come. We won't be able to hold them off and the quest will fail. Chapter 628. While they were talking, the paladins had reached the end of the battle line. Raging Thunderheart, who was lying in ambush at the front, waved his staff and shouted, Attack! Following Raging Thunderheart's command, the shield-bearers raised their shields and rushed into the piles of stones that had been piled up earlier on the cliff. The pile of stones was pushed by the crowd, and they rolled down the cliff like rain. The cliff was only 8 to 9 meters wide. Compared to such a high cliff, the path was too narrow. The boulders fell from above and collided with the mountain walls on both sides, falling in an extremely irregular manner. The Templars were caught off guard. Although the Templar Knights were level 60 elite monsters with hundreds of thousands of HP, and their armor was like a tin can, the Templar Knights were still hit by the falling stones. The damage was shocking, and if they were hit head-on, they would inevitably suffer broken bones and tendons. However, the Templar Knights were elite monsters after all. It was a shame for them to be killed like this. After being hit by the rocks from the sky, the Templar Knights reacted quickly. They put down the giant shields on their backs and stood against the mountain wall, temporarily blocking the falling rocks from the sky. At this time, the mages had already followed Wuji's instructions and created fireballs to ignite the piles of wood. Then, the shield-bearers from Raging Wrath turned around, picked up the burning wood piles, and threw them down. As the valley had been cut open by a sword, there were many things on the ground. Other than stones, there were many whole trees. The shields of the paladins could even block the boulders from the sky, so they naturally wouldn't be afraid of wood. Therefore, the players on the mountain could not hit the monsters below. Instead, they aimed at the trees on the ground. It was unknown whether the trees in the game were dry or not. After being hit by the burning wood piles, the trees on the ground quickly caught fire. Countless burning wood piles fell, instantly igniting the valley. The narrow valley was suddenly on fire. The paladins couldn't rush out, so they could only run back with their shields. In the middle of the valley, Wuji saw the fire and ordered, The fire is burning. Everyone, prepare for the second wave of attack. Not long after Wuji gave the order, The Templars were forced to the middle of the valley by the spreading fire. Under Wuji's command, another wave of falling rocks and burning stakes rained down on the paladins who did not have much HP in the first place. In the blink of an eye, half of the paladins were gone. Ignite the rear end. When Wuji saw that the group of tin cans had not been wiped out despite being hit by rocks twice in the raging inferno, Wuji immediately gave orders to the players at the back of the canyon. "Don't we have to wait for them to get closer before we start the fire?" Thunder God Berserk asked. "It would be very painful to throw a flaming wooden stake off a cliff and hit someone. Wouldn't it save a wave of damage if they lit it up now? There's no need. When they get closer, we'll let them escape." As Wuji spoke, a fire was lit at the end of the valley. The fire on both sides followed the combustibles at the bottom of the valley towards the position of the paladins. In just a short while, the 3 ambush points formed a line, and the valley became a river of fire. The paladins had been ambushed twice, and their HP was low. They fell to the ground after taking a few steps. At this time, Thunder God Berserk understood why Wuji had to light the fire for the last time. Damn it, after connecting the fire together, no matter where these tin cans went, they would be surrounded by a sea of fire. There was no way to escape. Before they could even reach the ambush point, they had already returned to the embrace of their god. If he had waited for the Templars to get closer before lighting the fire, with their thick skin and thick flesh, they might have already rushed out. Damn, that's vicious. Thunder God Berserk could not help but break out in a cold sweat when he saw how vicious Wuji's strategy was. Fortunately, in order to prevent players from setting the mountain on fire, the system did not recognize trees as flammable as long as they were still growing. Otherwise, when they were in Thunderstorm City, Chuanjin only needed to light a fire in the forest to burn everyone alive. No wonder he was a famous villain in the online gaming circle. He was so good at killing and setting fires. As the last paladin fell, the system sent out a prompt. "With everyone's cooperation, we have repelled the attack of the paladins. Mission completion plus 10%. In 5 minutes, the God's Punishment Legion will launch the second wave of attack." Damn, only 10%? Are there 9 more waves? Seeing the system prompt, everyone was stunned. The joy of victory was suddenly washed away. "I thought it was only 1 wave. I was wondering why the large instance was so easy to clear. It turns out that they want us to play tower defense." Everyone had basically played tower defense games before, and it was indeed quite vivid. Everyone liked it, but they also felt the difficulty of the task. No matter how difficult a level was in a tower defense game, the path was always twisty. On their side, there was only a pitiful straight path, and they couldn't even upgrade their turrets. Thinking of this, everyone suddenly felt that this dungeon was really rare and scary. "We haven't looted the equipment yet, right?" Looking at the sea of fire under the cliff, someone said. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other again. Damn. We can't even loot the equipment. What the hell are we doing here? Playing a game was all about profit. Now that they didn't even have that little bit of profit, everyone lost their fighting spirit. Forget it. They are just small monsters anyway. They won't drop anything good. Don't be depressed. Now that there is a fire below, the second wave of attack is likely to be a head-on battle. Then we can loot the equipment. Seeing that everyone's fighting spirit had dissipated, Wuji quickly said. This was only the second wave, and it was already like this. How could they continue? Those guys in the city were still going through the houses. If they were wiped out at this time, wouldn't the mission be over? F***ck, a head-on battle? Can we do it? Everyone panicked when they heard this. It was a level 60 elite monster among elite monsters. How could it be so easy to defeat it? It's just a set of data. As long as everyone listens to my command, we can win. As Wuji said this, he sent a message in the guild channel at the same time. Damn, it's really hard to watch the fish under the water. How many rooms have you found with this pile of trash? Find my ass. We haven't even finished looking through an alley. Mingdu said gloomily. It could not be helped. The NPCs did not know where Regis was, so everyone could only go through the houses. Wang Yu and the others were like the Japanese sweeping through the city, going from house to house. Unfortunately, Atlan City was too big. The 10 of them had searched for more than 10 minutes, but they had not even finished looking through an alley. We can't go on like this. I keep feeling like we've forgotten something, Wuji said thoughtfully. Why don't you ask Reynold? Mingdu began to suggest a rotten idea. Wuji said, ask my ass. Reynold is fighting one-on-one in the sky. Do I want to die? Chapter 629. Really? Where is he? Everyone asked after hearing Wang Yu's words. Wang Yu said, I think he should be hiding in the Magic Academy. No way, Prophet. He's such an important NPC, and we couldn't even find him in the administrative hall. How could he be hiding in the Magic Academy? Mingdu said doubtfully. Because he's Reynolds's teacher. Since Reynolds is the library's NPC, this must be his occupation. In that case, Regis is most likely a librarian, Wang Yu explained. Everyone fell silent. This explanation was very strong, and even a little far-fetched, but it didn't seem to have any flaws. Indeed, everyone had ignored the fact that Regis was Reynolds's teacher, but Reynolds's teacher might not be a librarian. After all, Reynolds had said that Regis was a great magister and scientist. Then it's very likely that he's a magic or science teacher. To place one's pride retorted. Makes sense, but where are the library and laboratory? The Magic Academy, that's it, Wang Yu said, so Regis is most likely staying in the Magic Academy. After hearing Wang Yu's explanation, Wuji added, Old Cow is right. Let's go to the Magic Academy and look for him as soon as possible. The quality of my personnel is too poor, and I don't know if they can hold on. After saying that, Wuji closed the chat box. At this time, the second wave of Templars had appeared. Since the mountain path was covered by fire, they couldn't march, and Gully was dragged in the sky by Reynolds, so the second wave of Templars could only choose to cross the mountain. Wuji and Heavenly Wrath looked down from the mountain and saw the Templars climbing up from the foot of the mountain. This wave of Templars was obviously not as many as the previous wave. There were only 100 of them, and they were sparsely scattered without any formation. They looked like tourists on an outing. Hey, this is the second wave? The Thunder God placed his hand over his eyes and looked at the paladins at the foot of the mountain. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. The number of monsters in the second wave was 10 times smaller than the first wave. Although there was no effective geographical ambush, in terms of numbers, it was still quite possible for 200 people to fight 100 people. Don't get careless. This is a large-scale dungeon. Have you ever seen a dungeon's second wave of monsters that are easier to deal with than the first wave? Moonless Thunder said. Not bad. These monsters look much stronger than the previous wave, Wuji said, nodding. No way, what do you think? They all look exactly the same. Thunder God Berserker was confused by Wang Yu's words. Wuji adjusted the glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, Look at their waists. Waist? When Thunder God Berserk and Moonless Thunder heard this, they quickly looked at the waists of the Templars. As expected, they found a clue. The previous wave of Templars only had 2 weapons, shields and swords. This time, the Templars not only had swords and shields, but they also had crossbows slung at their waists. The significance of an additional crossbow was different from other weapons. Other weapons were at most an additional weapon to choose from, but the crossbow was not only an additional weapon to choose from, but its greatest significance was to increase the long-range attack ability of this group of tin cans. The tin cans had high attack and defense, and they also had healing spells, battle formations, and other comprehensive skills. With such a configuration, the Templars were already extremely overpowered. Now, with the addition of long-range attack ability, the difficulty of survival for the players increased by another level. This was because the players of Heavenly Punishment Berserk were either shield warriors or mages. The attack range of the crossbow was longer than the attack range of magic. Thinking of this, Thunder God Berserk said in shock, F***CK, this is shameless. Fortunately, these guys don't seem to have much intelligence. With such a scattered formation, we can take them down one by one from above. As soon as Thunder God Berserk finished speaking, a group of NPCs suddenly emerged from the forest. These NPCs had all sorts of equipment and professions. There were even women and children. Everyone could tell at a glance that these NPCs were residents of Atlan City. Even the women and children are up. The Atlan people are really tough. Seeing this scene, Moonless Thunder secretly clicked his tongue. Nonsense. These Vatican troops are invaders. When their country is being invaded, it's everyone's responsibility to take up arms to defend their homeland. This has nothing to do with the customs of the people, Wuji said. Moonless Thunder laughed. Speaking of which, you belong to the Vatican too. I'm different from them. I only belong to the side of justice, Wuji said shamelessly. As they joked, the Atlan residents had already charged into the Templars' field of vision. Seeing people rushing down, the Templar Knights stood on the spot unhurriedly and raised their crossbows, shooting at the Atlan residents. Wuji saw the positions of the Templars and could not help but feel his heart tighten. After a round of shooting by the Templars, more than 10 residents were shot dead. Seeing this, the others turned and ran back up the mountain in a flurry. However, there was still a gap between the speed of going up and the speed of going down. The Templars still followed behind the residents unhurriedly, slowly climbing up the mountain. TSK, this is the difference in quality between the regular army and the militia. Moonless Thunder sighed. After all, the residents had never been on the battlefield. Compared to the Templars, the gap was too obvious. No, it's not what you think, Wuji said. The gap between the individual soldiers isn't that big. The Atlan City NPCs are better equipped. They're suffering from the formation. Are you kidding me? Aren't these Templars standing in a messy formation? Moonless Thunder said. Messy my ass. They're standing in a wavy line, Wuji said disdainfully. Wuji was all too familiar with the wavy line formation. This was a formation that Xuanzhen often used when they were outnumbered. This formation could disperse the enemy's firepower. For example, the Berserk Heavenly Punishment's Chain Lightning could not reach anyone. The Area of Effects spell could only be used as a single target spell. What was more frightening was that this formation could also form a crossfire when attacking, sealing the enemy out of range. Therefore, although they looked like they were standing in a messy formation, it was actually a very practical formation. Of course, this formation was not an original creation of Xuanzhen. This was the charge formation of the Huaxia army in the last century. With the advancement of technology, the army was gradually being retired. Those who still remembered this formation were those who had a deep understanding of the military. To think that there was such a capable person among the designers. F***CK, they really aren't just standing there. Our vision is blocked. When Moonless Thunder looked down, he found that the Templars had all shrunk behind the Atlan residents. Chapter 630. The AI of these Templars was rather high. They knew that attacking from below was disadvantageous to them, so they simply drove the residents of Atlan City to the front and used them as a shield. The players on the mountain could only see the general silhouette of these Templars from above. Why don't we get rid of these residents first? Thunder God Berserk said, his eyes shining. Boss, that's a good idea. The Atlan residents were not very strong, but their equipment was shining brightly. Everyone had long been envious of them. Now that they heard Thunder God Berserk's words, all the players were excited. Wuji sneered and said, "Try and hit them." Thunder God Berserk did not wait for an explanation. He pulled out his crossbow and fired at the Atlan resident at the front. Immediately after, he received a system notification. maliciously attacking your own NPC. Mission completion -1%. F***CK. Thunder God Berserk saw the notification and hurriedly put away his crossbow. Damn it, there was only a total of 10% mission completion. Hitting an NPC would decrease it by 1%. If he was killed, wouldn't the mission fail? Don't move, don't move. You can't hit the NPC. Thunder God Berserk hurriedly shouted, then turned to ask Wuji, Boss Wuji, what should we do now? In a battle between two sides, under normal circumstances, the person who occupied the high ground would have the advantage. Now that the Temple Knights were doing this, it was obviously a deliberate arrangement by the system. If they attacked forcefully now, they would definitely hurt the NPC by accident. Then, it would not be worth it. However, if they did not attack and the Temple Knights rushed up the mountain, it would be even more difficult to deal with. Wuji smiled slightly. It's very simple. We'll surround them now. At this time, the Chuanjin group, led by Wang Yu, had already arrived at the Atlan City Wizard Academy. As soon as they entered the academy, Wang Yu asked, "What should we say when we find Regis?" Mingdu took out a letter and said, "Use this letter to exchange for coordinates." "No way, it's that simple?" Wang Yu was slightly stunned. He felt that Mingdu's words were somewhat unreliable. As for why, Wang Yu could not say. Anyway, Wang Yu did not think that this mission would be so simple. Mingdu solemnly vowed, "Of course, simplicity is beauty. If it was that simple, why would I have followed you?" Linglong Meng asked. "I didn't ask you to follow me. It was that idiot Wuji who asked you to come. Maybe he wanted you to enjoy the process of completing an S-class mission," Mingdu said shamelessly. "Tisk, of all things to learn, you have to learn to be so shameless." Everyone looked at him in disdain. A mere academy of magic was not considered large compared to the vast Atlan city. The 10 of them split up to search, and as expected, it did not take long for them to find a frail-looking NPC in the library. Although the NPC's entire body was full of question marks, all the NPCs in Atlanta had gone out to resist the God's Punishment Legion. The NPC hiding here was definitely no one else but Regis, who was in seclusion. Seeing Wang Yu and the others barge into the library, Regis weakly shouted, "Who are you people? How dare you barge in without my permission?" Regis's voice was weak, and it seemed like he did not have long to live. However, the hostility in his words was still very obvious. "Huh? This guy looks familiar." Just as everyone was thinking about how to answer, Wang Yu suddenly muttered, then exclaimed, "So it's him. Do you know him?" Everyone asked Wang Yu curiously. They thought to themselves that this guy was really a strange person. He had seen all kinds of people. "Yes, he chased me before. Very powerful," Wang Yu said. This guy was none other than the strange NPC who had chased Wang Yu to the elemental tower. At that time, Wang Yu had only exchanged blows with the puppet form Regis for a brief moment. However, this guy had taken a hit from Wang Yu's staff head-on without losing a single drop of HP. He had even sent Wang Yu flying. This was enough to show how abnormal his strength was. At the very least, he was on the same level as Reynolds. TSK. You have the nerve to say that you were chased by an NPC in his twilight years, Linglong Meng mocked. Wang Yu smiled faintly and ignored her. As for the others, they didn't say anything. Although Regis looked like he was on his last breath, they all knew what kind of ability Wang Yu had. This guy could even exchange a few moves with the guards at the city gate. This guy in front of them actually chased after Wang Yu, so he must be a fierce person. Now that Regis had a look of hatred for his country and family, no one dared to provoke him. "Ol Li, take your letter and turn in the quest," Chun Xiang egged Mingdu on. "Damn, let's go together. Otherwise, what are you guys doing here?" Although he had the letter in his hand, no one could guarantee that Regis wouldn't turn against him. According to the system's past behavior, the probability of it turning against him was quite high. Mingdu wasn't a fool. Of course, he wouldn't dare to go. Mingdo wasn't a fool, so of course he wouldn't go. We're here to admire your heroic appearance when you complete an S-rank quest. Go, go, go. To place one's pride said, jumping up and down. F***ck, you bastards. I'm not going. Mingdu shrank back, not daring to step forward. Bao San and Yin Lao exchanged glances. They each grabbed one of Mingdu's arms and tossed him to Regis's side. Damn, Bao San, second brother, I treat you like my own children. How dare you trick me? Mingdu did not forget to take advantage of the situation. Speak. Who are you? At this moment, Regis didn't seem to have the stamina to talk nonsense with the Chuanjian people. So, he assumed that whoever came over was the leader. He didn't care how Mingdu was tossed over. Ah! Mingdu shrank back when he heard this. Then, he smiled mischievously and said, Teacher Regis, right? I really admire you. Cut the crap. How did you come in? Regis frowned and asked in a hoarse voice. I walked in through the door. Mingdu looked at the door of the library. You dare to trick me? Regis was already on his last breath. When he heard Mingdu's answer, he was almost angered to death. He pointed with his finger and condensed a bolt of lightning. Mingdu hurriedly said, Teacher Regis, I'm here to help you. As he spoke, Mingdu took out the letter. Regis glanced at Mingdu and received the letter suspiciously. Then, he casually looked at it and said, It's my handwriting, but I've never written it. You dare to lie to me? As he spoke, the lightning on Regis's finger continued to condense. F***ck, Master Lei, you really wrote this. We transmigrated here. Seeing that Regis didn't believe him, Mingdu became anxious. He actually used the word transmigrated. At this moment, Wang Yu finally knew why something was wrong. Meow, this letter was written by Regis, but Regis definitely hadn't seen it yet. Wasn't it nonsense for Mingdu to use this letter to exchange for coordinates? Chapter 631. Oh damn it. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard Regis' words. From what this guy said, it seemed like he knew something about time travel. He traveled through time to come here. Mingdo roughly explained to Regis. Did the future me ask you to come find me? As expected of a great scientist and mage, Regis's talent was indescribable. He could see through it with just a glance. That's right, Mingdu said. It seems like my research was successful, but Atlan was destroyed in the end. After listening to Mingdu's explanation, Regis, who was already struggling at death's door, became even more depressed. Yes, you don't have to be sad. Didn't we find it again? Hurry up and tell us the coordinates of the hermit land of gods, so that I can go back and save your people. Let me tell you, for your people, we've sacrificed too much. You have to give us some benefits no matter what, Mingdo said in a dignified manner as he patted his chest. Yes, you don't have to be sad. Give it to you? Everyone glared at Mingdu. Give it to us, Mingdu hurriedly said. Regis pondered for a moment and said, What hermit land of the gods? I've never heard of it. Uncle Lei, we've already said this much. You still don't believe us? Mingdo said anxiously. Regis shook his head and said, I really don't know what the hermit land of the gods is. This. Mingdu was speechless. Wang Yu said, Try saying it differently. The hermit land of the gods was just Reynolds' excuse. Regis should have another explanation. It's where you hid your people. I want to find them, reorganize the Atlan's radiance, and then gather your tribe, Mingdu explained. So you want the Atlan's radiance? Regis understood. It's not that I can't give it to you. Really? Mingdu was overjoyed. He did not expect this old fellow to be so easy to talk to. Yes. Regis nodded and said, As long as you can help us destroy God and his subordinates, I will give you the glory of Atlan. As soon as Regis finished speaking, Mingdu received a system notification. You have activated the Hell-level quest counterattack on the Divine Realm. Do you accept? Holy shit! When Mingdu saw the system notification, he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Hell Mode Quest. Holy shit. The Hell Quest was the scariest quest chain in Rebirth. Players would see this quest once in the faction panel when they chose a faction. The mission of the Light faction was to destroy all heretics and atheists, returning the continent to the light. The mission of the Dark faction was to annihilate all of God's people and neutral factions, causing the continent to return to darkness. These two quests probably couldn't be completed by the time the players closed the game, but Regis just randomly tossed them out. Attacking the world of the gods was not difficult to understand from the literal meaning. He was going to attack the world of the gods and destroy them. The Dark faction had 7 apostles, and their ultimate goal was the entire continent. However, Regis had even set his sights on the world of the god. Compared to him, the Light and Dark factions were really useless. Old Lei, do you know what level I am? Mingdu asked. Regis casually glanced at Mingdu and said, Level 40. Then do you know what level God and his subordinates are? The subordinates of God are naturally unfathomable. As for God, I don't dare to guess, Regis said. If you don't want to give it to us, just say it. Why are you trying to scare us? To place one's pride said unhappily. Regis sneered and said, Do you think I'm a fool to give you the holy relic of our race the first time I see you? Then how can you trust us? Wang Yu asked. Regis said, At least solve the problem in front of us first. I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on until then. Mingdu rolled his eyes at Regis and said viciously, You don't have to worry about that. I just cast too much just now. My life is not in danger, Regis said calmly. The wavy line formation of the paladins was what Xuanzhen was best at. Naturally, it was also what Xuanzhen was best at dealing with. Under Wuji's command, the Berserk Heavenly Punishment's shield warriors formed a shield formation and faced the paladins head-on. When the paladins were within the detection range of the group, Wuji finally saw the attributes of the paladins. Paladin Guardian Level 60, Elite, Holy Legion, HP 300000 MP, 200000 Skills, Knight Mastery, God's Praise Talent, Oracle Background Introduction, Paladin Guardian Unstoppable Power. Damn, these Tin Woodmen are almost as strong as a boss. I'm afraid we can't deal with them, Wuji said after seeing the attributes of the Paladin Guardian. These were soldier monsters. The more people there were, the stronger their attributes would be. Without the geographical location of the first wave, with a difference of 20 levels, the advantage of a mere 100 people was not worth mentioning. Moreover, these were the paladins of the Vatican. The Holy Class had always been known for their battle formations and recovery skills. Even with the same number of troops, they could exhaust their opponents to death, let alone deal with the Berserk Heavenly Punishment. After both sides advanced a few more meters, the Paladin Guardian finally entered the attack range of the mages. When the Paladin Guardian saw the Berserk Heavenly Punishment and the others in front of them, they stood still and raised the crossbow in their hands. Oh no, protect the NPC. Wuji saw the situation and hurriedly ordered. The crossbow's crossfire was indiscriminate. The NPC was in between the two groups. If they opened fire, they would definitely be attacked first. According to the shameless spirit of the system, even if the Paladin Guardian killed the NPC, it would probably lower the player's skill completion rate. After receiving Wuji's order, the shield bearers raised their shields in unison and charged forward, protecting the NPC behind their shield. Ding ding dang dang. After a wave of attacks from the Paladin Guardian, the tank's block value was depleted. Surround them! Wuji ordered again. All the shield warriors received the order, and the shield formation that was originally arranged in a straight line formed an arc, surrounding the Guardian army. Although there were 100 temple protectors, they were spread out. The Berserk Sky Law's tanks formed a return formation, surrounding the temple protectors in front of the temple protectors in 2 large and small circles. Retreat! Wuji ordered again. After receiving the order, everyone immediately retracted their formation. The surrounded Paladin Guardian were forced to move closer together. At this moment, the mages standing outside of the Paladin Guardian's attack range cast Chain Lightning. The 100 mages threw Chain Lightning at the heads of the 10 Paladin Guardian at the same time, taking away more than half of the HP of the Iron Skin monsters. "It's working!" Seeing the situation, Moonless Thunder was elated. Another wave of fireballs! Chapter 632. Damn it! Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. As expected of God's underlings, this was freaking insane. 2 waves of magic bombardment from 100 people against a mere 10, and the effective damage was only 20%. Just as everyone was in a daze, there was another flash of white light, and the Guardian army's HP rose again, recovering to 100%. Immediately after, the Guardian army raised their shields, spread out in formation, and charged outwards. Seeing this, the players defending the encircled Guardian army in the Hui formation hurriedly raised their shields and activated the shield formation. Duong! With a loud bang, the Guardian army's charge was stopped. However, the players didn't have it easy either. Although they outnumbered the Guardian army by several times and had activated their shield formation, the Guardian army was just too overpowered. The players' formation was on the verge of collapsing from the impact. These crazy fellows! Seeing how tyrannical the Guardian army was, Wuji could not help but break into a cold sweat. These Guardian army were simply all-rounders. Apart from their insane attack and defense attributes, their recovery ability was even more insane than the Holy Priest. If they wanted to destroy them, they could not be given any time to breathe. Thinking of this, Wuji ordered again, "Continue to attack. Frontliners, pay attention and use taunt to interrupt their casting, don't let them recover." At this time, the mage's Chain Lightning had finished its cooldown. At Wuji's command, the mages threw out a second wave of attacks. After the attack, the Guardian army's HP dropped sharply. Raising their shields, they were about to use their recovery skills again when the shield warriors took advantage of this gap to raise their middle fingers at the Guardian army and use taunt. The Guardian army was not a boss, and the taunt effect had a strong effect on them. The Guardian army's recovery skills were immediately interrupted, and fireball, lightning, and other spells were smashing into the heads of these tin cans. Attacking alongside the mages and players were the Atlan City NPCs. At first, these fellows were chased like dogs and did not attack the enemy at all. Now that the players' shield formation was blocking the attacks from outside the encirclement, these NPCs began to support the damage output once they were safe. Although the NPCs were a group of militia that didn't know how to fight in groups, the magical weapons in their hands were insanely powerful. Their scattered support output was almost as good as the players' coordination. Under the combined attacks of both sides, the 10 knights who had been surrounded were finally annihilated. As for the players' shield formation, due to their initial failure, they also lost more than 20 people under the crossfire of the remaining Guardian army. Change the formation from inside to outside. Wuji ordered again. The outer shield formation took a step forward and spread out in a straight line, devouring another 10 Guardian soldiers. The shield bearers who were originally in the inner circle followed closely behind. They stood back to protect the warriors who were originally in the outer circle. Retract, Chain Lightning, Taunt, Spell Bombardment. With the experience from the first time, the players cooperated with ease the second time. With the support of the Atlan City NPCs, another wave of the Guardian army was wiped out. Small monsters were small monsters. There were only so many tricks up their sleeve. Even if these fellows knew how to form a formation, once they found a way to break it, the rest would be easier to deal with. Under the coordination of the return formation commanded by Wuji, the Guardian army was nibbled away bit by bit. It didn't take long for all the Guardian soldiers to be killed. System notification: the defense was successful. Mission completion plus 20%. Due to the successful protection of the residents, completion increased by an additional 10%. In 5 minutes, the God's Punishment Army will launch the third wave of attack. There's still a third wave. Seeing the system notification, everyone's faces were filled with despair. In the battle just now, although the damage output professions had not suffered many losses, the tank professions had suffered huge losses. Now, all the shield bearers added up to only more than 20 people. Apart from the loss of more than 20 people in the first wave, everyone's formation became more coordinated. However, the team only had one cleric, Wuji. Their supplies could not keep up at all. After 10 waves, most of the frontline professions had died. This was the true meaning of killing 10,000 enemies with 8,000 casualties. Of course, none of the players were dissatisfied with this casualty ratio. After all, the Guardian Army was a level 60 Saint-type elite monster. Only the players who had truly fought against the Guardian Army would know how difficult it was to deal with these fellows. Fortunately, Wuji was here to command them. If it had been anyone else, they would have been sent out of the dungeon in one round. Therefore, at this moment, Moonless Thunder and Thunder God Raging were truly convinced by Wuji. In the first wave, they had killed 1,000 enemies without suffering any casualties. In the second wave, they had fought head-on with an 8 to 10 casualty ratio. It was no wonder that he could annihilate 1,000 with only 10 people. This fellow's commanding ability could be described as commanding troops like a god. What do we do next? Thunder God Raging and Moonless Thunder asked Wuji, as if they were holding onto a life-saving straw. The front row is gone. It's not going to be easy. Let's take it one step at a time. Wuji sighed. You mean we can't win? Thunder God Raging asked. Nonsense. In this kind of situation, do we still want to win? Right now, the completion rate is 40%. We'll just make do with it. If we can pass and receive the reward, that would be good enough, Wuji said. When? Thunder God Raging really dared to dream. The second wave of attack was already so abnormal. Now, more than half of them had died, and there were even more vicious waves coming up. How could they win? All right. Although Thunder God Raging was disappointed, he did not have any complaint. After all, it was already good enough that they could fight until this point. If it had been him commanding, he was afraid that they would have been annihilated in the first wave. At this moment, Wuji received a message from Chuanjin and the others. Wuji, what's the situation now? Can we defend? This old fart said that we have to repel the God's Punishment Army before he will give us the quest item, Mingdu said. He said that he might trust you, not give you the quest item, Wang Yu corrected. When dealing with NPCs, one had to decipher them word by word. Otherwise, one would die without knowing what was going on. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji thought for a moment and then replied, That old fart is obviously using us. If we can repel the God's Punishment Army, why would we need the coordinates of the Hidden Lands? That makes sense. What do we do now? Mingdu asked. What else can we do? I've already tried my best. At most, I can buy you some time. As for how to get the quest item, you guys figure it out yourselves. After all, it's not our quest, Wuji replied. Yeah, it's not our quest either. We might not even get the reward, the Chuanjin members agreed after hearing Wuji's words. I miss your sister. Mingdu was furious. This group of people didn't have any sense of loyalty. At this critical moment, Wang Yu was kinder. Seeing that Mingdu was going crazy, he quickly said, all right. Stop bullying Oldly. I have an idea. Old cow, what idea do you have? Everyone looked at him. Chapter 633. F***CK, what kind of stupid idea is that? Everyone coughed up blood when they heard Wang Yu's words. Regis was a top-tier NPC. Stealing from him was no different from pulling a tooth from a tiger's mouth. Do you guys have something even worse? Wang Yu asked. Even if it's not bad, there's no one like you. The few of us can't even handle a finger from him. famous sword Daoshua said with lingering fear. As Regis's disciple, Reynolds could cause such a huge commotion with a wave of his hand. This old man was definitely not someone to be trifled with. There were many ways to seek death. Why did he have to be crushed to death by this old man? Wang Yu glanced at Regis and said, "Haven't you heard of taking advantage of his weakness to kill him? Have you forgotten about the treacherous boss in the faction dungeon?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Regis was extremely weak right now. His strength was definitely not at his peak. Moreover, the people of Chuanjin had clearly angered him while he was in seclusion. However, this guy only talked and did not make a move. It could be seen that his strength had declined greatly. He might really be able to kill him. If we kill him, do you think Reynolds will chase after us? What if he can't drop what we want? Won't we lose out? Mingdu, who had always been unscrupulous, suddenly became cautious. It couldn't be helped. The quest was his, and the person who issued the quest was Regis's disciple. If they pursued the matter, Reynolds, as a heroic NPC, could definitely make life difficult for Mingdu in the mage profession, even though he could not delete Mingdu's account. Moreover, if the coordinates of the vanished god's land could not be dropped, wouldn't it be like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs? "You animal, you even want to kill an old man?" Wang Yu said with disdain. Regis was considered an ally, and he was also an old man. Robbing him was already a helpless strategy. Who knew that Mingdu would still want to kill him? His character was truly outrageous. That's right, he's an animal. Everyone was afraid of being looked down upon by Wang Yu, so they all started to criticize Mingdu. F*CK*UB*cheese, how are you going to deal with him if you don't kill him? Do you think he'll give it to us if we beat him up? Mingdu retorted disdainfully. That's right. He's an NPC, so he's not afraid of death. Even if we beat him to death, he might not give us anything. Maybe we'll lose our confidence, the others said. Wang Yu glanced at Ming Jian Dao Shui and said, "We can steal it, eh? Not bad. Even if we can't snatch it, we can still steal it." Everyone followed Wang Yu's gaze to look at Ming Jian Dao Shui, and their eyes lit up. Famous sword Dao Shui had the steal technique. There was a fundamental difference between the steal technique and the steal technique of Godly Thief. The steal technique could only steal items from bags. Moreover, the steal technique would be useless against targets that were much higher than the thief technique. The steal technique was different. Apart from weakening targets that were higher than the user's level, there were basically no restrictions. Not to mention the items in the bag, even the clothes on the body could be taken off. The success rate was as high as 30%. How was this a steal technique? It was simply a robbery technique. We can give it a try. Ming Jian Daoshua nodded and said, "But how do we steal it?" There was a punishment for failing the steal technique. He couldn't just stand there and let others steal it. First beat him half to death, then press him to the ground and snatch. Oh no, steal again. Wang Yu's method was very simple and crude. That simple? Mingdu was surprised. Is simplicity beautiful? Wang Yu said. Everyone. At this moment, Regis seemed to have noticed everyone's plan. Seeing Wang Yu and the others looking at him with ill intentions, he asked vigilantly, "How is it? Have you thought about what you should do to earn my trust?" Yes, we've thought about it. As Mingdu spoke, Exquisite Dream and Yang Na were the first to attack. They raised their hands and shot arrows at Regis. Shadow binding arrow? Regis was shocked and angry when he saw that the Chuanjin people dared to attack him. He immediately moved his left hand and an earth shield rose from the ground, blocking Yang Na and Exquisite Dream's arrows. Then, Regis pointed his index finger a few times and 3 black rays of light landed on the two's shadows. The two of them were unable to move. At the same time, lightning condensed on Regis's finger and aimed at the two. It's the shadow binding technique. This old man can control shadows. Exquisite Dream turned pale with fright as she sent a message in the channel. Regis's shadow-binding technique was much more superior than Exquisite Dream's shadow-binding arrow. Just the two states of immobilization and silence lasted 15 seconds, which was 10 times longer than Exquisite Dreams. Save Little Snow and Sister Meng. Bao San saw that the two archers were about to be killed and roared loudly. He and Yin Lao Air charged over together. Hee hee. Regis sneered. His fingers stopped condensing lightning. He flipped his palm downwards, and a patch of blue spread out with Regis as the center. In the next moment, the ground beneath Bao San and Yin Lao's feet turned into a layer of ice. Crash! Bao San and Yin Lao Air were in the middle of a collision. When the ground froze, they immediately lost their balance and crashed into each other. Regis waved his hand with the back of his hand, and the two of them were instantly frozen into ice cubes. Fortunately, their sacrifice bought Chun Xiang some time. Chun Xiang summoned 6 demons with the Book of Sealing in his left hand to surround Regis. He used the staff in his right hand to cast the Holy Word spell, removing the debuffs on Exquisite Dream and allowing her to regain her freedom. After regaining their freedom, Exquisite Dream and Yang Na involuntarily retreated a few meters. Holy Word spell, summoning demons. Are you a judgment priest from the Vatican? Seeing Chun Xiang's skills, Regis's aggro instantly shifted. After saying that, Regis's index and middle finger joined together and drew a dazzling white cross in the air. Chun Xiang's demons instantly melted, and Regis pounced on Chun Xiang. Seeing how powerful Regis was, Mingdu hurriedly withdrew the spell he was about to cast. He was worthy of being a great mage. With just a few casual moves, Regis was able to use dark, earth, lightning, light, and ice magic. Wasn't using magic in front of him just asking for trouble? After all, Mingdu had learned a new phrase when he first entered the dungeon: magic backlash. Seeing Regis pouncing over, Chun Xiang expressionlessly waved his staff. A dark barrier rose up and covered him. Regis extended his right hand and directly inserted it into the barrier. The barrier shattered on the spot and Chun Xiang's health bar dropped by a third. Flash chain kick. To place one's pride let out a loud roar and flew towards Regis's back. Regis didn't even turn his head. He waved his sleeve and a tornado blew to place one's pride several meters away, smashing the bookshelves in the library. To place one's pride was sent flying. Mingdu cursed angrily. Little chick, you idiot. You turned up the sound of your skill so loud. You've been beaten up, haven't you? In the game, the sound of skills could be adjusted. These wretched fellows from Chuanjin always turned the sound of their skills to the lowest possible. To place one's pride had recently obtained a new skill and hadn't had enough of showing off. In the end, he was killed in one move. Chapter 634. While blowing to place one's pride away, Regis had already condensed a fist-sized, blazing white fireball in his hand and threw it at Chun Xiang. Brother Chun, be careful. Seeing that Chun Xiang was about to be hit by the fireball, Wang Yu took a step forward and flashed behind Chun Xiang. He grabbed Chun Xiang's collar and pulled him to the side, barely dodging Regis's fireball. Then, with a loud boom, the place where Chun Xiang had just occupied was blown into a huge pit. Hiss! Everyone gasped when they saw the power of the fireball. In fact, Regis had been merciful. He had stopped when dealing with everyone, focusing on control and not killing them. He had only used offensive methods against Chun Xiang. Meow, Regis really hates the Vatican to the core. Chun Xiang was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, someone had pulled him away at the critical moment. Otherwise, he would have been blasted to smithereens. Regis didn't look good either. The fireball just now seemed to have consumed a lot of his energy. Seeing that the fireball was dodged, he was obviously surprised. However, a master was a master. Although Regis was surprised, he didn't stop at all. He waved his hands continuously, throwing icicles, wind blades, and other spells at Wang Yu and Chun Xiang. Wang Yu threw the flight of spring in her hand to the side and rushed towards Regis magic. Lowen's spells like icicles and wind blades didn't have fast trajectories, and they were the same in Regis's hands. Wang Yu dodged left and right, and while dodging the spells, he took a few steps forward and rushed toward Regis with a collapsing fist. Regis was slightly startled. He spread his arms, and an earth wall spread out horizontally to block Wang Yu's collapsing fist. Then, Regis's body flew backward like a feather. Regis had just landed when Mingjian Daoxue and Baiming Yu rushed out and stabbed Regis's back with 2 daggers. Bam! Regis, who was stabbed, suddenly exploded, sending Mingjian Daoxue and Baiming Yu flying. At the same time, Regis's real body slowly descended from the sky. Motherfucker! The members of the Quan Zhen sect were all dumbfounded. It was 10 against 1, and in just a single round, Regis had already defeated everyone. Even Wang Yu wasn't able to gain the upper hand. This old man was too powerful, wasn't he? Why don't we retreat first? I think the God's Punishment Corps is easier to deal with than him, Mingdu suggested. Old Li is right. If this old man wants to kill us, then none of us will be able to leave. Why don't we take this opportunity to leave? Chun Xiang seconded. At this time, Chun Xiang had already been frightened by Regis's hatred for him. Recalling that fireball, Chun Xiang still had lingering fears. Regis was proficient in all types of magic, and his rich combat experience was rare. It should be known that the magic that Regis had just cast were all low-level magic. However, although they were low-level magic, they were naturally cast by Regis. He could exert great power with just a wave of his hand. Every spell did not waste any magic power. The brainless monsters of the God's Punishment Corps were much worse than this old cunning fox. And this was still in a weakened state. If Regis was at his peak, it was estimated that they wouldn't be able to hold on for half a round. At this time, hearing what Mingdu and Chun Xiang said, everyone in Xuanzhen couldn't help but want to retreat. Just when everyone was about to retreat, Wang Yu suddenly said, "No, it's not that Regis doesn't want to kill us, he can't kill us." Why do you say that? Hearing this, everyone asked in confusion. The intuition of a master, Wang Yu said. Damn. Everyone said, why didn't we feel it? Wang Yu said, because you aren't strong enough. Everyone was silent. Wang Yu then said, I can clearly feel that Regis is already using his full strength, but I don't know how to say it. Everyone was silent again. Brother Nyo, it's hard for us to accept what you said. At least give us a reason, Chun Xiang questioned. The intuition of an expert was to feel that the opponent had used his full strength. If it was in reality, there might be some credibility, but this was in the game. It was hard to be convinced with these 2 sentences. Seeing that the others were suspicious of him, Wang Yu scratched his head, thought for a moment, and said, It was clearly us who attacked him first, but his attack couldn't kill us. Hearing what Wang Yu said, the others suddenly understood. The NPCs in Rebirth, especially the high-end NPCs, were not easy to deal with. Although they didn't do all kinds of evil, they weren't kind characters either. No matter where, once a player attacked an NPC, the NPC would definitely retaliate fiercely. At this time, Xuanzhen was the one who attacked first, but Regis stopped. This didn't make sense. Could it be that Regis was kind by nature? Forget it, this was even less trustworthy than the intuition of a master. Therefore, there was only one possibility. It wasn't that Regis didn't want to kill people, but that he was so weak that he didn't have the strength to kill everyone. Otherwise, why would an NPC like him need to charge up the channeling time to kill a player? The most suspicious thing was that after Regis flew out, he didn't attack anyone. Instead, he stood there with his eyes closed, clearly meditating to recover his stamina and mana. Damn, everyone attacked quickly. We can't let him recover. Thinking of this, everyone surrounded Regis again. Sensing the movements of the Xuanzhen people, Regis suddenly opened his eyes, and the icicles and fireballs in his hands were thrown at the Chuanjian people. As the saying went, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. As a top-tier NPC, even if Regis's strength was less than 1%, his MP was still much more than that of the players. Fireballs and icicles were all low-level spells, and each of them only consumed 10 to 20 MP. This kind of consumption was still bearable for Regis. Moreover, Regis's attack range was very far, and Yang Na and Exquisite Dream's hands weren't as long as his. Under the cover of magic, everyone couldn't get close at all. They could only hide behind bookshelves, pillars, and other obstacles that couldn't be hit by magic. After the Chuanjian people hid, Regis also slowed down his casting speed and meditated again. "Damn, he's meditating again," Mingdu shouted anxiously when he saw Regis close his eyes again. Meditation was the best way for a mage to recover mana. If Regis was allowed to meditate like this, it wouldn't be long before his strength would recover. With this old man's ability, even if he recovered 10% of his strength, the current players wouldn't be able to deal with him. "Damn, we can't afford to waste time with him. Are we going to fight or not?" Bao San asked. Now wasn't the time to hesitate. They had to make a decisive decision whether to fight or not. Wang Yu said, "Fight, why wouldn't we fight?" "Then how do we fight now?" Chapter 635. Restrain? Can it work? Regis's casting speed is too fast. It's not easy to push forward. Bao San frowned. The Chuanjian people were now more than 20 meters away from Regis. With the attack range of a Grandmaster of Combat, to launch an effective attack, they had to be within 5 meters of Regis. Even if Wang Yu had the teleportation skill, the teleportation distance was no more than 5 meters. Therefore, Wang Yu had to advance at least 10 meters. Judging from the frequency and speed of Regis's magic release, it would be very difficult to restrain him head-on. If Yin Lao Air's shield wasn't broken, they could give it a try. At this time, Yin Lao Air didn't have a shield. Even a warrior with rough skin and thick flesh wouldn't be able to withstand such an attack. Wang Yu said indifferently, "You don't need to help push forward. You just need to slightly disperse the density of his magic." "Oh, it's not impossible to disperse, but if you push forward alone, he will attack you again very soon." "Then how will you deal with it?" Bao San asked. The intelligent NPC wasn't stupid. Naturally, he knew the principle of shooting the bird that stood out. Everyone was outside the circle. Regis would disperse his attacks, and Wang Yu would charge forward alone, so he would naturally receive concentrated fire. "It doesn't matter. As long as you guys disperse the density of magic in front of you, I'll have my own way in the back," Wang Yu said. "All right then." Bao San nodded and said, "Everyone, spread out and attack." Following that, everyone stood up and took a few steps back, out of Regis's attack range. Then, they followed Bao San and Yin Lao Air to stand on the left and right sides and walked forward at the same time. After a few steps, the people in both directions stepped into Regis's attack range at the same time. Regis opened his eyes and released magic to everyone on the left and right. Originally, when everyone was in one direction, Regis's magic density was shockingly strong. Now, it was split into two and attacked on both sides, leaving an opening in the middle. Wang Yu stomped on the ground and rushed toward Regis at an extremely fast speed. When he saw Wang Yu rushing over, he clasped his hands together, and the two spells flying in two different directions combined into one and attacked Wang Yu. At this time, Wang Yu had already rushed nearly 3 meters forward. Seeing the magic flying towards him, Wang Yu raised his right hand and made a throwing gesture. Then his body flashed, dodging the magic and appearing 5 meters away. At the same time, his right hand had already completed the throwing motion. When Regis saw Wang Yu appear, he waved his hands slightly to the side. Magic drew a curve in the air and was thrown at Wang Yu again. However, at this time, a long staff flew straight at Regis from the side. "Holy shit! What the F***ck? Seeing Wang Yu's flash throw, the Chuanjian team's jaws dropped to the ground. Everyone knew that Wang Yu's long staff was his main weapon, and in Rebirth, only some secondary weapons could be thrown. They were not the throwing weapons recognized by the system. In order to throw, one had to complete the throwing motion. To hit the enemy from a distance of more than 10 meters, it required a lot of strength and high accuracy, so the throwing motion would definitely be slower than normal. However, Wang Yu had raised his hand to throw the ball before he flashed, and completed the throw after he flashed. From raising his hand to throwing the ball, he had completed it almost at the same time. This was totally against the principles of science. Although everyone knew that it was nonsense to talk about science in the game, they were still shocked to see Wang Yu do this. My God, every time I fight side by side with Uncle Neo, I learn more about how crazy he is. To place one's pride clicked his tongue. Agreed, block. Everyone nodded. Seeing the long staff flying towards him, Regis turned pale with fright and hurriedly raised his hands to block. It didn't matter if he blocked, but the magic that was being released was forcefully interrupted. With the ballistic speed of these low-level magic, Wang Yu was not afraid at all. What troubled Wang Yu the most was that Regis's magic could form an attack line. This line rotated back and forth under Regis's control without any blind spots, making it impossible to dodge. At this time, Regis's casting was interrupted, and the fireball and icicle that had already formed a line was also broken. Wang Yu's speed did not decrease at all as he dodged to the side. After sprinting a few steps, he rushed towards Regis with a collapsing fist. The distance of 5 meters was closed in an instant. When Regis blocked Wang Yu's long staff, Wang Yu had already rushed to 3 meters in front of Regis and reached out to catch the long staff. Then, the long staff slightly tilted forward, heading towards Regis's abdomen. Regis's IQ was not much different from that of a real person. Seeing that Wang Yu's methods were so despicable, he hurriedly released an earth wall to block Wang Yu's long staff. Wang Yu smiled slightly. The long staff supported itself on the earth wall and flipped over in midair. At the same time, the long staff was switched to a glove. Wang Yu grabbed Regis's head in the air. Although Regis's earth wall had a high defense, it also blocked Regis's vision. How could he have thought that Wang Yu still had such a move? As a result, he was caught off guard and was grabbed by his hair by Wang Yu. By the time Regis was grabbed, Wang Yu had already landed behind Regis. His left hand ruthlessly pulled Regis's hair back with a tiger strike. Regis involuntarily fell backward. Then, Wang Yu raised his knee and ruthlessly hit the back of Regis's head. 22521. It was a critical hit on his back. Regis's body swayed from the hit, and a stun sign appeared on his head. Seeing that Regis was stunned, Wang Yu grabbed Regis's hair with his other hand. He hugged Regis's head with both hands and slammed his knees into the back of Regis's head. 3245-6624. Every time Wang Yu's knee hit Regis, Mingdu's heart would contract. The Chuanjian people also broke out in a cold sweat. F***ck. What happened to respecting the old and loving the young? F***ck. Old cow, stop hitting him. If you hit him again, he'll die. Mingdu shouted from afar. Regis had a quest item on him. If he died, it would be troublesome. Of course, Mingdu's worries were purely unnecessary. No matter what, Regis was still a legendary top-level boss. Within the 2 seconds of Regis's stun, Wang Yu had hit the back of Regis's head 5 times. After dealing this series of damage, Regis still showed no signs of dying. 2 seconds later, Regis's stun came into contact. Wang Yu did not hesitate to throw Regis towards a nearby bookshelf. At the same time, Wang Yu switched his weapon to a long sword and threw it backwards. Bang! Regis, who had hit the bookshelf, suddenly exploded. At this moment, Regis was using Regis's doppelganger, and where Wang Yu's sword was pointing, a figure appeared. It was Regis, whose face was full of shock. Wang Yu's sword was currently pressed against Regis's throat, sealing Regis's magic chant. Chapter 636. In reality, it was fine to point a sword at someone's throat and threaten them. However, in the game, the boss had millions of HP, and players couldn't kill them in seconds. Why would they care about this? Regis looked coldly at Wang Yu and floated backwards. Wang Yu clapped his left hand, and a white light wrapped around Regis. At the same time, he stepped forward and stabbed the sword in his hand into Regis' throat. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 blood floated up, and Regis was muted. His body, which was floating backwards, fell to the ground involuntarily. Regis's expression changed. He raised his left hand and was about to conjure a spell to counterattack when Wang Yu's sword slashed across and stabbed into Regis's wrist. Before Regis could conjure a spell, it was interrupted once again. After being interrupted twice in a row, Regis flew into a rage. He swung his right hand, and blue ice suddenly slapped at Wang Yu. Wang Yu calmly shook the sword in his hand. The sword flashed, and almost at the same time, it pressed against Regis' frost-covered palm. Puff! After a crisp sound, Regis's hand was immediately forced to stop in midair, and he did not dare to extend it even an inch further. No matter how awesome a magician was, it was still very awkward to be close to someone, even if the opponent was someone like Regis. What's more, Regis had met an opponent like Wang Yu. Regis waved his sword at Wang Yu a dozen times in a row, while chanting magic. Meanwhile, Wang Yu stood with his feet apart, his left hand behind his back, and the sword in his right hand either raised, stabbed, or slashed. Every time, before Regis' attack could land on him, he would stab the sword into Regis' vitals and forcefully interrupt his attack. Regis's breathing became heavier and heavier, and the frequency of his attacks became slower and slower. His expression became uglier and uglier. Wang Yu, on the other hand, was still standing with her sword in one hand, casually deflecting Regis's attacks. She did not even move her feet. The difference between the two of them was obvious. That was the boss that had beaten the Quan Zhen members to the point where they couldn't even fight back. Now it was being suppressed by a single hand. This scene was simply unbelievable. The Chuanzhen team, who were used to seeing Wang Yu's freakish performance, felt refreshed when they saw this scene. They admired Wang Yu's skills even more. Uncle Nyo, this is the legendary sword skill, right? To place one's pride said with fascination. Holding a sword in one hand and not moving his feet, he was able to beat the boss until it couldn't even use its skills. There was no such shameless skill in the game. This was definitely a skill brought over from real life. Bao San said gloomily, "Damn it, we both play with swords, but why do I feel like I'm playing with hammers?" Other than charge and other specific skills, warrior skills were the same when attacking. It was just that the skill names were different and the effects were different. As for normal attacks, they were even more simple and crude. Holding the sword with both hands, they slashed horizontally and vertically without any skill to speak of. It was like swinging a heavy weapon. To put it nicely, it was called a heavy sword without a sharp edge. To put it bluntly, it didn't require any skill. Seeing how Wang Yu and the others adjusted their sword skills according to the boss's attack angle, Bao San immediately felt inferior. Bao San had also learned kendo, and his rank wasn't low, but compared to Wang Yu, he saw the difference between a professional and an amateur. "I play with shields," Yin Lao Air retorted softly. "Come on, I play with staffs. Don't I still kneel when I see old cow using a staff? When he uses a shield, you'll be crying." Mingdu curled his lips. Mingjian Daoxue and Bai Mingyu looked at each other, as if remembering when Wang Yu used a dagger. Exquisite Dream rubbed her chin and mumbled, "From what you're saying, this kid can use any kind of weapon? I wonder if he knows how to use a bow and arrow." To place one's pride didn't say anything, because Wang Yu mostly used boxing gloves. He was the only one who wouldn't compare himself to Wang Yu. Yang Na, on the other hand, stared at Wang Yu, her heart deeply moved. Compared to the others, Yang Na could be considered a professional, and her understanding of Wang Yu's skills was also far superior to the others. In the eyes of ordinary people, Wang Yu being able to single-handedly defeat a boss could only be described as amazing. But because Wang Yu didn't use a system skill, even if ordinary people watched a video of Wang Yu fighting a boss, they wouldn't be able to understand any technique. Yang Na was different. She was a professional. Although Yang Na's expertise was worlds apart from Wang Yu's, she could still understand some technical things. Of course, for Yang Na, the more she knew, the more she didn't know. For example, Wang Yu's attack speed wasn't fast, and she didn't have any moves to study. However, the angle of Wang Yu's attack was extremely accurate. She could always interrupt Regis's spells before they were released. This was a skill that Yang Na had never come into contact with before. Xiao Shui, what kind of sword technique is Brother Niu using? Chun Xiang moved closer to Yang Na and tried to strike up a conversation with Yang Na. I don't know. Yang Na shook her head. Good. Chun Xiang gave Yang Na a thumbs up. It's better if you don't know? Ming Du and to place one's pride curled their lips. As the saying goes, know what you know, and don't know what you don't know. Little Snow is really an honest person, Chun Xiang praised. How shameless. Everyone was stunned by Chun Xiang's wretchedness. Yang Na smiled and said, I'm telling the truth. Nyogu doesn't use any moves, but every time he attacks, he seems to be able to predict where Regis is going to attack. Every time he attacks, he will stab forward. As for how he does it, I don't know either. F***CK, God's prediction. Chun Xiang clenched his fist in surprise. As an expert in calculation, Chun Xiang's prediction skill was quite high. When he heard Yang Na's words, he couldn't help but shout. God's prediction is so vulgar. In Kung Fu, it's called prediction. Right, Sister Snow? To place one's pride said with a smile. Anticipating the enemy's moves, Yang Na's heart suddenly thumped when she heard this. Being able to predict the enemy's moves was a legendary realm that only those who had mastered all the martial arts in the world could reach. It was said that after reaching this realm, a martial artist would be able to see through all the moves and routines at will. When competing with others, they would also be able to do whatever they wanted, and would be successful in every endeavor. They would no longer be restricted by the moves, and would be able to defeat the enemy with a wave of their hand. Even during the era when martial arts were popular, it was rare to find such a great martial arts master. Could it be that this kid had already reached this legendary realm at such a young age? Thinking of this, Yang Na glanced at Wang Yu again. Only then did she silently accept this fact. That's right. As the saying goes, no move is better than having a move. Wang Yu's attacks were no longer restricted by move. Every move he made contained great power. This was the embodiment of the highest realm of martial arts. Chapter 637. Regis's face was pale and he was panting heavily. It looked like he had used up all his strength. This old man was a boss after all. If it wasn't for the system setting that he was an old man about to die of exhaustion, Wang Yu's continuous attacks would have taken a long time to beat him down. Regis had the demeanor of a grandmaster. After losing to Wang Yu, he didn't brag about how he was at his peak. Instead, he said weakly, I didn't expect the Vatican to have such a young junior. But for the sake of our Atlan tribe, this old man won't give you what you want even if I die. Regis's attitude was very resolute. His righteous words made Wang Yu's teeth hurt. These words were said by the main character on TV. How did he suddenly become the villain? What Vatican? I'm in the neutral camp. Wang Yu revealed his identity. Regis said unconcernedly, Neutral camp? Never heard of it. Indeed, this era didn't differentiate between camp. The whole world was a land blessed by God. Then how can you trust us? Repel the Identity Legion. I can think about it. The old man still didn't relent. Sigh. Wang Yu sighed helplessly. If that's the case, then I'm sorry, old man. As he spoke, Wang Yu pressed his longsword against Regis's throat to prevent him from playing any tricks. Then, he glanced at Ming Ken Daoshua. Ming Ken Daoshua understood. He walked up and touched Regis's chest, activating the steel skill. F***ck Daoshua, you're into this? These guys from Chuanjin could always find nonsense at any time. Seeing Ming Ken Daoshua's vulgar behavior, they couldn't help but mock him. Ming Ken Daoshua said with a red face, "What are you laughing at? This skill has to be used like this. Otherwise, where do you think the 30% success rate came from?" The word success rate was a very subtle academic term in online games. In short, it could be summed up in one word: scam. A 30% chance was extremely high. It was like fighting a boss and having a 1/3 chance of dropping an ultimate equipment. It was frighteningly high. Because of this, the system had placed many restrictions on the steel skill. For example, players had to touch the target's chest to cast the skill. This could also be considered a method to restrict players. Otherwise, with this 30% chance, Mingjian Daoshua would have long since gone to Dragon Island to steal it. Right now, with this condition, Mingjian Daoshua wouldn't be able to get anything out of the dragon's claws. The steel skill flashed by, and Mingjian Daoshua's expression stiffened. Everyone hurriedly asked, "Did you steal it?" "No, the skill failed," famous sword Daoshua said with shame. Don't worry. It's just a probability. We understand. You can continue touching," everyone urged. They didn't feel like they were supposed to touch the old man's chest. Famous sword Dao Shui wiped his sweat and said, "Wait a moment, my skills are in cooldown." After 50 seconds, Mingken Daoshua's skill came off cooldown. Mingken Daoshua ignored Regis's murderous gaze and placed his hand on Regis's chest once more. The skill flashed by, and Mingjian Daoshua was stunned again. He then lowered his head and said, "I failed again. It's a 30% chance. You can continue." Everyone expressed their full understanding of the probability problem. The third time, he was still stunned, and the steel skill failed again. "Daoshua, this skill of yours really has a 30% success rate? Don't tell me you're too unlucky?" Seeing that he failed 3 times in a row, everyone couldn't help but be suspicious. Probability was something that was more common when it came to battles of faces. A 30% chance was something that a normal person could succeed after touching twice. If he failed 3 times in a row, he would be quite unlucky. Of course, if he met someone with an ugly face, he might not get anything good even if he touched it 10 times. The author of this book had a 10% chance of getting it on the first try. Don't talk nonsense. I've always been a Chuanjin. There must be a problem with the position. Saying that, Mingjian Daoshua ignored Regis's feelings and touched Regis's left chest again. As expected, he failed again. "Hey! I don't believe it." Mingjian Daoshua would rather admit that he was a noob than admit that he was ugly. After failing 4 times in a row, Mingjian Daoshua's stubborn temper was completely aroused. His perverted hand circled around Regis's chest, but after 10 minutes, the skill still failed. This made the situation awkward. A 30% chance of touching 7 or 8 times in a row was a failure. This was too strange. Mingjian Daoshua's luck was usually quite good. "What the F***ck do we do?" Mingdu said anxiously. Mingjian Daoshua needed a minute to cast the steel skill. They couldn't afford to waste time like this. The God's Punishment Army was still attacking the mountain. Wang Yu said, "Could it be that the steel skill's effect is weakened so much?" The steel skill had a weakening effect on high-level bosses. No, the weakening effect isn't much. Even if Regis was max level, his steel chance would still be above 15%. It's definitely this old man's problem. Mingjian Daoshua said. When Mingjian Daoshua first obtained the steel skill, he used it on high-level NPCs in the city. Although he died many times, the degree of the steel skill's weakening was tested. However, during that period of time, Mingjian Daoxue became known as an abnormal person. Of course, later on, someone revealed that Mingjian Daoxue was a member of Chuanjin. Only then did the majority of players understand. Chuanjin was a group of abnormal people. This kind of thing couldn't be more normal. Why don't we take off this old man's clothes and then touch him? Oh no, steal again. Exquisite Dream shouted excitedly. When the Chuanjin players heard this, a layer of black lines appeared on their foreheads. This evil woman, how could she be so wretched? What was the difference between not being able to steal and not wearing clothes? This girl's intentions were too obvious. Little Dream, restrain yourself. When we get back, we'll strip Wuji and let you touch him. Mingdu hurriedly advised. This was Mingdu's quest. If they continued playing like this and the quest wasn't completed, it would be a miracle if they made a system announcement. Everyone still had to have this bit of face. I think what Little Dream said makes sense. At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly said. Hearing Wang Yu say this, Mingjian Daoxue was about to cry. Damn, old cow, you didn't give me the steel skill just to scheme against me, right? Touching an old man, and even stripping him. Let's not talk about where the old man would hide his things after stripping him. This kind of behavior was infuriating. No. Wang Yu shook his head, pointed at the sword on Regis's neck, and said, My sword is pointing at his main artery. Just now, when Little Dream said to strip his clothes, I felt his pulse jump violently. Old cow, don't talk nonsense. I haven't offended you, have I? Mingjian Daoxue wanted to cry, but no tears came out. What the F***ck was going on? He could even feel his pulse. What are you talking about? Isn't it just stripping him naked before touching him? Don't be shy, I believe you. I can help you strip his clothes, Wang Yu said. Just as Wang Yu rolled up his sleeves and was about to make a move, Regis said helplessly, Don't touch me. I'll take it off myself. Chapter 638. Don't touch me, I'll do it myself. Regis weakly shouted. His voice was filled with stubbornness. It was uncomfortable to touch an old man, and it was even more uncomfortable for an old man to be touched by a man. Hearing that Wang Yu wanted to forcefully undress him, Regis was in despair. What the F***ck were these people? Rather than being forcefully stripped, it was better to do it himself. As he spoke, Regis reached out and took off his coat. Keep taking it off. Seeing that Regis really took off his clothes, Exquisite Dream's eyes lit up. Just one is enough, Regis said. Exquisite Dream said, I don't believe you. Hurry up and take it off. If you don't, we'll help you. Regis hurriedly waved his hands. No. Just take off this coat and you can start stealing. Is that so? The Quan Jin people curiously used a detection spell on the coat in Regis's hands. Regis' fourth dimension robe, fashion, fourth dimension law, 100% chance of blocking spatial magic. Profession requirement, general level requirement, 1 item description, Great Magister Regis's coat. So steel is a spatial magic. No wonder. Everyone immediately understood when they saw the coat's description. No wonder famous sword Daoxue's steel was so much more powerful than steel. It was the legendary spatial magic. Spatial magic was a very rare system. Although it was rare, every type of spatial magic was extremely powerful. For example, the most practical flash was one of the most basic types of spatial magic. Although this robe was only for fashion, this special attribute was very powerful. However, spatial magic was very rare, so this special attribute was not very useful at the moment. Give it to me. Exquisite Dream pointed at the robe with envy. Humph. Regis looked at Exquisite Dream with disdain. He flipped his hand and was about to put it back into his bag. Quick, snatch it. Exquisite Dream shouted and shot an arrow at Regis. Bao San rushed over from the side and was about to snatch it, but Wang Yu casually stopped him. Don't snatch it by force. Wang Yu smiled. The system has a setting. An NPC's item will only have an attribute if they give it to him or steal it. If you snatch it from him, it won't have an attribute. Oh? Since that's the case, how about we cut off his hand now? Ling Longmeng quickly responded. F***ck, are you going to let me do the quest or not? Mingdu was depressed. Wang Yu shook his head and whispered something in Regis' ear. Regis was startled, and under everyone's surprised gazes, he reluctantly handed the robe to Wang Yu. No way, he's giving it away just like that? What did Uncle Nyo say to him? To place one's pride wondered. The others were also suspicious. It can't be some dirty deal, right? Hee. Wang Yu laughed and said, What nonsense are you talking about? As the saying goes, hit the snake where it hurts. To deal with this kind of NPC, you have to find the weak spot. I just told him that if he didn't give it to me, I would strip him naked and drag him to the plaza. He obediently gave it to me. Everyone. As a prophet, Regis was naturally highly respected among the Atlanteans. Being stripped naked and thrown into the plaza was definitely more painful for him than being killed. Old cow, you're no longer the person we first met. Everyone sighed. Back then, Wang Yu was so honest. Now, he could do such a thing. Everyone taught me well. Wang Yu was modest. Then why don't you just threaten him to hand over the quest item? The Chuanjian people were indeed veteran hooligans. They were even more ruthless than Wang Yu. Seeing that Regis was so concerned about his face, they couldn't help but ask. When Regis heard this, his beard became crooked. He snorted and said, then strip me naked. Well, this old man was also a stubborn person. It was easy to choose between clothes and face, but in the face of national righteousness, face was not so important. This spirit was truly admirable. Seeing that the threat was useless, the Chuanjian people would not really strip an NPC naked and throw him out, so they gave up on the idea. After Regis took off his clothes, there were no obstacles. Famous sword Daoshue's theft finally worked this time. After touching it 3 times, he was notified that the theft was successful. Then, a small yellow cube the size of a square fell into famous sword Daoshue's hands. Unknown Fragment 5, Special Item. Item Introduction. It hides the secrets of Atlanta. F***ck, why is it this thing again? I'm not doing it anymore. Famous sword Daoshue grabbed the small cube in his hand with a depressed expression. Due to the fact that they had made a wasted trip to obtain the Atlan key, the people of the Quanzhen sect were now rather dissatisfied with these deceptive decryption tools. They had endured the disgust and fumbled around for a long time before finally finding such an item. Don't worry. Take your time to touch it. You might get it next time. Don't you have to touch the boss several times? You'll be the boss. Everyone hurriedly dissuaded him, afraid that famous sword Daoshua would quit. After all, touching an old man's chest was not a good job. I'm not going to open a boss in future dungeons. Famous sword Daoshua said angrily. They were both boss, but there was a difference in touch between a man and a woman, let alone a dead one and a living one. If you don't touch it, I'll strip you naked and let Little Meng touch you. Chun Xiang threatened. I'll be happy to help. Meng Linglong was tempted. Are you guys still human? Looking at his teammates who were worse than animals, famous sword Daoshua wanted to cry but no tears came out. He could only continue to touch Regis. At this time, Regis's face was filled with despair. The two of them looked at each other, feeling like they were both fallen people. Under everyone's supervision, Mingjian Daoshue used the steel technique on Regis's body one after another. After half an hour, Mingjian Daoshue was on the verge of puking, but he only managed to find 5 unknown fragments. When he found the 5th fragment, famous sword Daoshue's heart broke. Daoshue, can you do it? Why are they all trash? Can't you touch something useful? Everyone said with disdain. If you can do it, then do it. Famous sword Daoshue glared at everyone. Everyone hurriedly shut their mouth. Teacher Lei, just give us the quest item. I'm begging you. Famous Sword Daoshue's heart ached. Regis's mood was even heavier than Famous Sword Daoshue's. I also want to give it to you, but it's against the rules. How about this? Return the fragment to me, and I'll increase your favorable impression points by 1,000. How about it? This. When Famous Sword Daoshue heard this, his eyes brightened. 1,000 favorable impression points. If one's favorability with an NPC reached 100, they could receive special quests. Didn't that mean that they could exchange for quest items with 1,000 favorable impression points? Chapter 639. Hearing Wang Yu's question, Mingjian Daoshui was slightly taken aback. He immediately retracted his outstretched hand. Meow, this group of people pressed Regis to the ground and beat him up without saying a word. They even stripped him of his clothes and touched him casually. As the saying goes, a scholar can be killed but not humiliated. How could Regis have a good impression of the people from Chuanjin? Sure enough, hearing Wang Yu's question, Regis was silent for a moment before saying, "Give me the fragment, and I'll give each of you a piece of exclusive equipment." Forget about exclusive equipment. As long as you give me our quest item, this fragment will be yours, Mingjian Daoshui said. How about one exclusive weapon per person? Regis was determined to get the fragment, and the conditions were doubled. Exclusive weapons. Weapons and clothes were considered to be the most valuable items in a player's equipment category. Although they weren't rare, they were the most expensive. This was especially true for the Quanzhen sex group, which had a hidden class like Wang Yu. The value of an exclusive weapon was obvious. Regis had put in a lot of effort for these fragments. However, the more Regis was like this, the more Chuanjin felt that something was wrong. It was just a few broken fragments. Were they worth so much? One set of exclusive equipment per person. Mingdu fully displayed his shameless talent and began to take advantage of the situation to ask for an exorbitant price. Regis looked at Mingdu with resentment, then sat on the ground and returned the money. One exclusive weapon and clothes per person. Damn, exclusive weapons and clothes, how about it? Do you want to exchange? To place one's pride asked excitedly when he saw that Regis's price had doubled again. Chun Xiang sneered. No. Why? Isn't it just a few broken fragments? To place one's pride was puzzled. It's because they're broken fragments that we can't exchange them. Think about it. Why does Regis value these broken fragments so much? Wang Yu said. Could it be that this has something to do with the coordinates of the hidden gods? To place one's pride, as a young man, was not cunning enough, but he was still very clever. That's hard to say. In any case, if we switch, we'll fall into a trap. None of these guys are honest, Wang Yu replied. How could it be so easy to trick an NPC's items? They said they were exclusive weapons and clothes, but who knew what level they were used for? If he was given a level 100 weapon, he might still have some hope. But if he was given a level 1 weapon, wouldn't he cry himself to death? Then, system notice. Your party has only 10% members remaining. Do you wish to vote to give up on the dungeon? Just as everyone was in a dilemma, a prompt flashed before their eyes. F***CK, what's going on with Wuji? Didn't they say that there would only be 10 enemies in this wave? How did you all die so quickly? After seeing the prompt, everyone hurriedly asked. When the third wave of attacks began, there had been over 100 players on the mountain. Why were there only a dozen or so now? Cut the crap. How are things on your side? Did you get the quest item? Soon, hold on a little longer. Wang Yu replied. He then pressed his sword against Regis's throat once more. He then said to Famous Sword Daoshue, ignore him and continue looting. Since everyone suspected that this fragment was related to the hidden gods, it was most likely the case. Meanwhile, the hidden gods had 6 coordinate Currently, famous sword Daoxue only had 5 fragments numbered 1 to 5. In other words, there should still be a fragment number 6 on Regis. The players on the mountain would not be able to hold on for long. They had to find the last fragment within a limited amount of time. Famous sword Daoxue nodded and continued to loot Regis. If the fragment was related to the coordinates, then his previous efforts were not in vain. Famous sword Daoxue regained his confidence. Wuji's side was in a more tragic state. Although there were only 10 monsters in the third wave, they were called Temple Adjudicators. Not only were these guys good at melee combat, but they also practiced both magic and martial arts. They could use high-level light magic and were truly versatile. The Berserk Divine Punishment shield bearers were wiped out in the second wave. Without the front line, no one could stop these guys at all. So, in order to stall for time, Wuji had everyone attack the Adjudicators before splitting up and running around the mountain with their aggro. Even so, mages were still a class with short legs. They did not have an advantage in running away. Under the pursuit of the 10 Temple Adjudicators, only Wuji, Berserk Thunder God, and a dozen or so people were left. The situation of the remaining dozen or so people was not optimistic. The Temple Adjudicators chased them all the way, and Wuji and the others were chased to the edge of a cliff. There was no way out. Boss Wuji, in this situation, should we go all out? Berserk Thunder God's eyes were bloodshot. Seeing the Temple Adjudicators closing in, he seemed to have lost his mind. Wuji calmly said, "Don't be anxious. Calm down." "Calm down my ass," Berserk Thunder God anxiously roared. "Just charge forward and it'll be over. That's not going all out. That's courting death. Right now our completion rate is only 40%. Only at 60% will we get the guaranteed dungeon reward. Since we haven't died yet, there's definitely a chance to turn things around." Wuji said. "Boss Wuji, you're joking, right? So many of us were killed by them, let alone the 10 of us?" Moonless Thunder said. Wuji rubbed his chin. "We've been chased for so long. Haven't you guys noticed something?" "What is it?" "These Adjudicators' long-range attacks are all aimed. As long as they can't see us, they won't use long-range attacks," Wuji said. "What's so strange about that? I do the same." "It's not the same." Wuji shook his head. "They're normal NPCs. The basic settings can't be changed, so as long as we're not seen by them, they can only rush over and fight us in close combat based on aggro." "Damn, we're all mages. Don't tell me we're going to fight them in close combat? What are you thinking?" Berserk Thunder God said. What do you know?" Wuji looked at Berserk Thunder God with disdain. He casually threw out the pink snake, and a pink mist enshrouded everyone. At this time, the Adjudicators had also arrived in front of Wuji and the others. Just as they were about to attack, they saw that Wuji and the others had disappeared, so they put down the long-range weapons in their hands and walked over to the pink mist. "Damn, they're coming." The pink mist's effect was ineffective against teammate. Everyone could not help but exclaim when they saw the Adjudicators getting closer and closer through the mist. "What's there to be afraid of? Do you see these guys? Everyone attack." Wuji pointed at the Adjudicators and gave the order. "This." Everyone looked at each other, not daring to attack. "What a bunch of cowards!" Wuji cursed inwardly. He produced a holy light orb and threw it over, accurately hitting one of the Adjudicators in the face. After the Adjudicators were attacked, they pulled out their lances. The 10 of them lined up in a row and shouted, "For the holy light and glory!" They then charged into the pink mist. "Spread out!" Chapter 640. Although the Berserk Heavenly Punishment players were useless, they were not unmovable pits. When they received Wuji's order to disperse, they immediately realized what Wuji was thinking. Seeing Wuji dodge to the side, the others also ran to the side. The players were currently at the edge of the cliff, and the Adjudicators had limited intelligence. When they saw the pink mist blocking their vision, they immediately formed a charge in the direction Wuji was attacking. The next moment, the adjudicators rushed to the edge of the cliff. As elite NPCs, the adjudicators had a charge distance of 10 meters. Under the surprised gazes of the players, the adjudicators jumped off the cliff. Boom! A few seconds later, the sound of a heavy object hitting the ground could be heard. This sound was enough to prove that people of different weights had jumped off the cliff at the same time under the influence of gravity. When the players on the cliff heard the sound, they hurriedly ran to the edge of the cliff and looked down. They saw the adjudicators struggling to climb up the flames. Damn, they didn't die from falling that high? Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. In the game, the damage calculation for falling from a high place was very high. Jumping down from such a high place and still being able to climb up, this metal can was simply hard to the point of making one's hair stand on end. Watch your ass. Hurry up and find a rock and throw it down. When Wuji saw that everyone was still in the mood to watch the show, he was so angry that smoke was about to come out of his mouth, so he roared out an order. When the players heard this, their faces turned red. They hurriedly retracted their heads, picked up a nearby rock, and threw it down. At this time, the adjudicators at the bottom of the valley were already halfway up the cliff. When they were hit by the rocks, the adjudicators were smashed down like dumplings. This went back and forth a few times, and the adjudicators were smashed into the valley again and again. The damage from the fall was not low to begin with, and now, with the fire damage from the valley and the rocks on their heads, the adjudicators were finally tormented to death. System notification. Defense successful. Quest completion plus 30%. Adjudicator Gully has entered Berserk mode. Everyone, please prepare for attack. Damn, Adjudicator Gully. After seeing the system notification, everyone looked towards the horizon in unison. When Wuji received the news, his face darkened. He never thought that the final boss would be Adjudicator Gully. If it was any other boss, Wuji might have been able to buy some time. However, Gully was a ruthless person who could split a mountain in half with a single slash of his sword. Currently in the game, other than a few bosses, no one was a match for him. Could it be that the Berserk Heavenly Punishment and these pieces of trash wanted to deal with NPCs of this level? Was this a joke? Even if all the people from Chuanjin were here, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single slash from Judge Guli. Are you done? I can't hold on any longer. Wuji asked anxiously. No, I couldn't steal the last fragment, Wang Yu replied. Chuanjin's group was also in the party. Naturally, they had seen the system notification and knew that they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. However, Redchester was really strange. He had managed to steal the first 5 fragments 5 times in a row, but the last one was as if it didn't exist. Famous sword Daoshua had managed to steal several times, but other than a few pieces of trash, he didn't find the last fragment. While everyone was talking, Renault had already chased after Gully and arrived above Wuji's group. Although the previous battle was just a cutscene, it wasn't hard for Wuji to see that Gully's strength was slightly inferior to Renault's. Otherwise, a warrior and a magician would have been able to defeat each other after such a long time. At this time, Gully's subordinates were completely annihilated, and he had no desire to continue fighting. Seeing that Renault had completely suppressed Gully, everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The two of them clashed for another 2 rounds. Gully was caught by Renault, and a flame blast knocked him back a few meters. At this time, Gully took out a scroll and shouted angrily, "You god judges, go to hell!" As he spoke, Gully tore the scroll. Suddenly, a dazzling holy light descended from the sky, covering the entire sky in white. Then, the corpses of the paladins that were trampled to death by the players also turned into spots of white light that flew into the sky and merged with the holy light. Everyone knew that this was just a cutscene in the game. However, the game's craftsmanship was so realistic that everyone felt as if they were in the game itself. They couldn't help but be fascinated. The holy light lasted for a full 30 seconds before gradually dissipating. When the holy light faded, a strange person wearing knight armor with white wings on its back appeared beside Gully. The strange person had 4 pairs of arms, holding a cross sword, a cross spear, a cross bow, holy halo, holy light, holy cross shield, and a magic staff. No one knew how strong it was, but it looked arrogant. If Wang Yu was here, he would definitely recognize this strange person. This was the god's puppet from the elemental tower. Although the one Wang Yu encountered was much more low-key than this one, its appearance hadn't changed. Servant of God, clear the god judges in front of you. Gully pointed at the players, and the god's puppet swooped down from the sky and landed among the dumbfounded players. Then, with a sweep of its spear, all the surrounding players were killed. Only Wuji managed to dodge the god's puppet's attack by relying on his superb movement. The god's puppet raised one of its arms, and holy halo and holy light shot towards Wuji. If it were any other time, with Wuji's lazy personality, he definitely wouldn't be bothered to resist such a sure-death situation. But now, in order to buy time for Wang Yu and the others, Wuji braced himself and raised his magic staff. It had to be said that Wuji's reaction speed and mechanical skills weren't weak even among professional players. In Xuanzhen, apart from Wang Yu and Yang Na, Mingdu, Chun Xiang, and the others who knew Wuji well didn't dare to guarantee that they could beat Wuji in terms of mechanical skills. Otherwise, which one of those people in Xuanzhen wouldn't be arrogant? If Wuji didn't have this ability, he probably wouldn't be able to control those bastards. Seeing that the holy halo was about to fall on Wuji's head, Wuji raised his magic staff and cast Dispel on his head. Then, he rolled to the side and dispelled the god's puppet's attack. Seeing that Wuji dodged its attack, the god's puppet expressionlessly knocked an arrow and fired at Wuji, directly reducing Wuji's HP to 0. At the same time, the god's puppet raised its shield and charged at Wuji. Wuji buffed himself with a barrier, once again dispelling the attack. Then, he drank a recovery potion and cast a few heals on his head, restoring his HP to full. Chapter 641. Wuji's HP and mana were interchangeable. His total HP was comparable to a shield warrior's, and the holy priest had many buff skills. Therefore, the god puppet's normal attacks could not kill him instantly. Moreover, this crazy guy could still use a few healing spells between the god puppet's attack. After struggling for a round of attacks, he was finally knocked out of the instance dungeon by the god puppet. The Atlan City NPCs were just decorations. They could not do anything in front of the god puppet. The only one who could fight, Reynold, was also entangled with Gully and could not stop the god puppet. After killing Wuji, the god's golem wreaked havoc along the way as it charged towards Atlan City. The plot proceeded smoothly according to the script of history. The god's golem charged straight to the Academy of Magic. "Old man, if you don't give us the quest item now, you won't be able to save yourselves," Mingdu threatened Regis loudly as he watched the god puppets approaching the library. Regis said stubbornly, "Humph, if I give it to you, my people and I will be dead." Damn. Everyone collapsed. This old man was really stubborn. That guy is almost at the door. To place one's pride pointed outside. Wang Yu looked outside, then said to place one's pride, "You stay here and help Daoshua hold down Regis. We'll go out and stop it." Can we stop it?" Mingdu asked. "I don't know." Wang Yu shook his head and said, "Try to stop it as long as you can. Try to buy as much time as possible." As the only person who had fought against the god puppet, Wang Yu knew how terrifying it was. Back then, Wang Yu had only fought a weakened version of the god puppet. This god puppet looked much stronger than the one Wang Yu had fought alone. However, this guy could not even kill Wuji. It was not impossible to deal with it. Instead of waiting for it to come in and die, it was better to give it a try. The worst outcome was being killed out of the instance dungeon. Even if they did not try, they would still die. And Chuanzhen's group was a group of desperados. Since they had nowhere to run now, they naturally wouldn't admit defeat at this critical juncture. With that said, everyone followed Wang Yu out of the library. The god puppet was wreaking havoc in the academy's courtyard. When it saw Wang Yu, it spread its wings and flew over. Everyone hurriedly cast detection on it. God's puppet? Puppet HP? MP? Skills? Talent? Background introduction. A destructive machine summoned by a servant of God through a life sacrifice using an ultimate magic scroll. Because it is its first time descending, it doesn't seem to be used to its new body. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the introduction of the god's puppet. Although this fellow was full of question marks, it wasn't so abnormal that even its name was a question mark. Of course, even so, this fellow's level was still more than 20 levels higher than everyone else's, so he definitely couldn't be underestimated. In the blink of an eye, the god's puppet arrived in front of everyone. It swung its crossguard sword and swept toward the Chuanzhen players. Seeing this, Lao Air charged over and used taunt on the god's puppet in an attempt to block its attack. Little did he know that the god's puppet was extremely strong. With a sweep of its sword, Lao Air was sent flying into the wall. Lao Air was fully equipped with top-tier equipment, and his defense and health were at the level of a top-tier expert. Yet, he was directly beaten to a pulp. Seeing this scene, the Chuanzhen players were horrified. After all, no one understood Lao Air's attributes better than they did. Even he was beaten half to death, let alone the others. Before everyone could recover from their shock, the god's puppet grabbed the crossguard spear in its other hand and swept it toward everyone from left to right. The attack range of the crossguard spear was nearly double that of the crossguard sword. This was an AoE attack. None of the Chuanzhen players could escape. At this critical moment, Wang Yu's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward and grabbed the god's puppet's spearhead before it could reach everyone. Immediately afterward, Wang Yu jumped to the right along with the momentum of the spear. He flew into the air and kicked the Chuanzhen players with both legs. As Wang Yu had grabbed the god's puppet's spear from the right, his feet landed on everyone before the god's puppet could reach them, kicking them out of the god's puppet's attack range. Seeing that everyone had escaped safely, Wang Yu pushed his arms forward and somersaulted in midair, landing in a corner on the god's puppet's right side. Everyone, pay attention to your positioning. Don't let it hit you. Long-range players, find cover. This fellow can attack from a distance, Wang Yu warned after landing. However, everyone did not move. They all stared at Wang Yu as if they were looking at a monster. Damn it, not only did he not die from the boss attack, but he could also grab the boss weapon and accurately kick everyone out. This guy is crazy. Everyone knew that Wang Yu was a martial artist. No one would compete with him in terms of technique. However, Wang Yu, a grandmaster of combat, dared to face the boss head-on. His courage was definitely unparalleled. No wonder people said that skilled people were bold. What are you looking at me for? Hurry up and dodge. Seeing that the god's puppet had taken out its third weapon, Wang Yu hurriedly shouted. Only then did the Chuanzhen players react. They all retreated and hid behind a large magic statue at the entrance of the library. At this time, the god's puppet had lost its target. It raised its shield, turned right, and charged at Wang Yu. A knight's charge had a knockback effect. Against this kind of attack, Wang Yu did not dare to take it head-on like He Fengkai. Seeing the god's puppet charge at him, Wang Yu turned around and leaped into the air. He stepped on the wall and jumped high into the air. At the same time, the god's puppet's shield crashed into the place where Wang Yu had been standing. Boom! The god's puppet's enormous strength smashed a large hole in the wall. In midair, Wang Yu kicked off the wall and jumped over the god's puppet's head. He turned around and kicked the back of the god's puppet's head with thunder step. -11411, a critical damage value floated up. The god's puppet's head didn't even shake. One of its hands stretched out from under its wings and suddenly reached under Wang Yu's feet, grabbing Wang Yu's ankle. Crap. Not good. Old cow has been caught. Seeing that Wang Yu had been caught, the Chuanjian players all attacked the god's puppet. The god's puppet's other 7 hands danced up and down, blocking the attacks of the Chuanjian players. At the same time, it grabbed Wang Yu's hand and smashed it into the ground. Just as Wang Yu's head was about to hit the ground, Wang Yu pushed off the ground with his arms and activated Flaming Tornado Kick. Bang 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 bang! Wang Yu's feet burned with flames as he repeatedly kicked the god's puppet's back. Under the effect of Flaming Tornado Kick's suction, the god's puppet was forced to let go of Wang Yu's ankle. Chapter 642. Wang Yu's attack dealt over 20,000 damage to the god puppet. However, the HP bar above the god puppet's head didn't budge in the slightest. It was clear that the god puppet's HP was bottomless. The god puppet froze for a moment when it saw its target break free from its grasp. It turned around and charged at Wang Yu with large strides. The god puppet's body was long and its legs were long. With a single step, it covered a distance of 4 meters. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Wang Yu. Then, it lifted its huge foot and stomped down on Wang Yu. The god puppet's attack power was extremely high. A single swipe from its claw could paralyze a player like Yin Lao Er. How could a fragile player like Wang Yu have a good ending? Wang Yu hurriedly rolled to the side when he saw that his feet were about to reach his head. He rolled to the side of the god puppet and dodged its attack. However, at this moment, the god puppet's sword-wielding hand stabbed downwards, aiming for Wang Yu's head. Wang Yu kicked the god puppet's leg and used the force to move back a distance, narrowly avoiding the god puppet's sword. Then, the god puppet's shield smashed down from above. The crossguard sword was a sharp weapon with a small attack area, so it was easy to dodge it. However, the shield was wide and big, and the god puppet's shield was like a wall. It was impossible to dodge such a small movement. Damn it! Wang Yu cursed inwardly. He rolled to the right a few times to avoid the god puppet's shield. That's right, he didn't roll, he rolled on the ground, making a scene. Up until now, Wang Yu had only been in such a sorry state when he was surrounded by the guards. The god puppet's weapons weren't limited to just these. After Wang Yu dodged the shield, he didn't slow down at all. Instead, he rolled backward and half-squatted on the ground. Then, he pounced forward, past the god puppet's leg, and pounced on its heel. Just as Wang Yu steadied himself, the god puppet's spear stabbed into Wang Yu's position. Although the god puppet had many arms, it only had 2 eyes. Wang Yu was currently standing in a place where it couldn't see him, so he was safe for the time being. Wang Yu couldn't help but break into a cold sweat when he saw the god puppet's weapon falling. Then, Wang Yu switched his weapon forms. One long and one short sword appeared in Wang Yu's hands. Wang Yu stared at the god puppet without blinking, paying attention to the movement of its upper body. He knew that this thing was a robot, and its weapons could turn at unimaginable angles, so he had to be on high alert. As expected, after the god's puppet lost its target, it twisted its upper body in a strange manner and swung its sword horizontally at Wang Yu with its waist as the axis. Wang Yu used her short sword to parry the god puppet's blade and the long sword in her right hand to parry the god puppet's attack. In the next moment, Wang Yu was like a piece of chewing gum stuck to a windmill. She followed the god puppet's attack and arrived in front of it. Of course, although Wang Yu was in front of the god puppet, because its upper body had turned 180 degrees, the back of its head was still facing Wang Yu. After the cross sword slashed horizontally, Wang Yu gently landed on the ground. Just as the god puppet finished its attack, Wang Yu pressed down on the sword hilt and leaped onto the god puppet's head. Eagle stamp, thunder stamp, bang, 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 boom. 11245-21457-11457-44154 Wang Yu stomped on the back of the god puppet's head 4 times in a row. The knockback effect of the last stomp caused the god puppet to sway slightly forward. At the same time, Wang Yu sat down and clamped his legs around the god puppet's neck. He wrapped his arms in front of him and thrust his two swords, one above and one below. The short sword stabbed into the god puppet's eye. The long sword circled around the god puppet's neck and ruthlessly slashed across. 22167-375962 blood-red critical damage numbers floated up, and the HP bar above the god puppet's head finally emptied. This move was called double encircling the moon, and it was one of the Wang family's sword techniques. If this move hit someone in the real world, their head would have been cut off long ago. However, in the game, the god puppet only shook its head symbolically in an attempt to throw Wang Yu off. Seeing the god puppet's lively and unconcerned appearance, Wang Yu was about to cry. F***ck, this doesn't make sense. It's not dead even after that. Although Wang Yu had never used this move on anyone before, Wang Yu's many years of martial arts training had been deeply ingrained in him. It was difficult to change his way of thinking after playing such a short game. Why don't you die? The Quan Zhen players behind the statue cried when they heard Wang Yu's words. The god puppet had only casually revealed a few moves, and everyone had already witnessed its strength. Not only did Wang Yu have the upper hand in a one-on-one fight against such a powerful boss, he was also complaining that he couldn't instantly kill the boss. This behavior was too inhumane. Of course, from the beginning to the end, everyone had never seen Wang Yu as a human. After all, no human could be this cruel. As the final boss, the god puppet naturally wouldn't just sit there and do nothing. Seeing that it hadn't shaken Wang Yu off, it reached out and grabbed Wang Yu's back. Bang! Wang Yu's body shattered. It was actually a clone. The real Wang Yu had already landed behind the god puppet and was once again in a defensive stance. Seeing Wang Yu in a defensive stance again, to place one's pride couldn't help but exclaim, "Uncle Nyo is actually blocking and counterattacking." Blocking and counterattacking was a very ancient combat style in the game. It first appeared in two-player fighting games. The specific operation was to defend when the target attacked, and then launch an effective counterattack when the target used up all his moves. This combat technique was known as the blocking and counterattacking style. Because this fighting style was very boring and did not have any technical content, many experts despised it and called it the tortoise style. And that's true. But second brother was sent flying. How did old cow do it? Everyone was an expert, so they naturally recognized this infamous fighting style. The only thing that they didn't understand was how Wang Yu could still block and counterattack in this situation. In the early stages of fighting games, when there was no such thing as a block value, the top experts of the blocking and counterattacking style were basically unbeatable. Later on, some games added a rule that after blocking a few moves consecutively, one's defense would be broken. In order to prevent this type of fighting style from affecting the player's gaming experience, blocking and blocking were determined based on the attack value. Other than grabs, the higher the attack value, the higher the attack value. Chapter 643. While everyone was still in shock, the god's puppet's upper body returned to its original position. Then, it spun around and slashed at Wang Yu. Once again, Wang Yu used his arms to block. Following that, the god puppet's sword flew to the other side of the god puppet. Then, Wang Yu jumped up and used Eagle Stamp, Thunder Stamp, 4 consecutive kicks, stabbing the eye, slitting the neck, and embracing the moon. The god's puppet grabbed someone, and Wang Yu's doppelganger slipped away. Chun Xiang, Mingdu, and the others watched with the attitude of learning. However, after watching this round, they were still in a daze. They couldn't figure out what was going on. What the F***ck is going on? Shouldn't he have been killed in one hit? Did he use a hack? Chuanzhen's group was a rare expert. Experts had an inexplicable curiosity towards gaming technique. Wang Yu and the god's puppet had fought the same way for 2 rounds, but they still couldn't figure out what was going on. They couldn't help but scratch their heads and start talking nonsense. Hang my ass. Didn't you see him jump back when he was fighting the boss? Do you think he's stupid enough to fight the boss head-on? Yang Na said with disdain. Yang Na's insight into the game wasn't as good as Chuanjin's experts. However, as a martial artist, Yang Na's understanding of Wang Yu was far greater than the average person's. Others might not know how Wang Yu did it, but this girl understood what was going on. Jump back. Everyone was slightly surprised. When Wang Yu's third round arrived, everyone's gazes locked onto Wang Yu's feet. Just as Yang Na said, when Wang Yu's two swords came into contact with the boss's crossguard sword, Wang Yu jumped back. Due to the god's puppet's high priority, it could easily send players flying. Hence, no one had noticed Wang Yu's actions. In reality, even if they had noticed, ordinary players wouldn't have been able to guess what Wang Yu was doing. After all, in-game battles mainly relied on statistics and skill control. Wang Yu's small movements were completely baffling in the eyes of other players. Did Old Cow's jump cancel out the boss's strength? Bao San scratched his head. Although Bao San wasn't cunning enough, he was very talented in the game. He immediately saw through Wang Yu's intentions. Cancelled out? Is that even possible? Hearing Bao San's words, everyone was stunned. Everyone had only heard of players jumping back to dodge attacks in the game, but jumping back to offset the force of a boss was something normal players didn't even dare think about. Even so, after the offset force disappears, won't the Old Cow still be cut? Mingdu asked in confusion. Hee. Chun Xiang smiled and said, didn't you see that the two swords in Brother Nyo's hands formed a triangle? When the force disappeared, he was stuck with the boss sword. No wonder. Mingdu nodded his head, not really understanding. That's right, the god puppet's strength had been cancelled out. Although the god puppet's strength was great, if Wang Yu jumped in the direction of the god puppet's sword, he would be able to cancel out a large portion of the force. Wang Yu's two swords formed a triangle, effectively blocking the god puppet's sword and turning himself into a part of the god puppet's sword. If Wang Yu was a fly and the god puppet's sword was a fly swatter, then the fly swatter would be swung horizontally. The fly that was hit by the fly swatter would suffer a different fate than the fly that was originally on the fly swatter. Thinking of this, everyone was even more frightened than before. Wang Yu was able to jump back to offset the force of the god puppet's attack and turn himself into a part of the god puppet's sword. Even if they knew the theory behind this, they wouldn't be able to do it. This kind of clear difference in skill made everyone feel even sadder. Since Old Cow can tank the god puppet's attacks, should we help him? Exquisite Dream asked as she knocked an arrow and aimed at the god puppet. Spring Dash hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't do anything yet. Old Cow has his own rhythm. If we attack carelessly, we'll only make things worse. With Old Cow's temper, he'll definitely call for us when he needs us to help. Indeed, Wang Yu's rhythm and methods were completely beyond the understanding of ordinary players. That was why when Quan Zhen and Wang Yu attacked the god puppet together, the others didn't even have the chance to attack. Only when Wang Yu had complete control of the situation would he call for help. There was no such thing as stamina in the game. Although blocking the god puppet's attacks was very taxing on one's concentration, one's stamina did not decrease. As they fought the god puppet again and again, Wang Yu became more and more familiar with the god puppet's attack. He even felt that it was boring. It couldn't be helped. The god puppet's health bar was too high. Blocking and counterattacking were passive, and players had to follow the god puppet's attack rhythm. As such, after fighting for a long time, the god puppet's health bar had only dropped around 5%. Not only did Wang Yu feel bored, but Quan Zhen's group also felt sleepy. Even those who fought the god puppet felt bored, let alone those who watched others fight the god puppet. Dealing with a brainless, thick-skinned monster like this was a pain in the ass. Damn it, I can't take it anymore. This is a boss in a large instance dungeon. If he keeps fighting it by himself, won't he be able to fight it until tomorrow morning? Exquisite Dream looked at the time, then at the god puppet's health bar. She couldn't help but complain. The others didn't say anything. They all turned to look at Spring Dash. Exquisite Dream was right. Bosses in large instance dungeons had an astronomical amount of health. If Wang Yu continued to fight it at this pace, it would take too much time. Moreover, everyone was here to play the game. They couldn't just let one person kill the boss. Spring Dash helplessly shook his head and said, "We can't do anything. The old cow has finally mastered the rhythm. If we mess it up, we'll just be adding to the chaos." "What do you know?" Exquisite Dream rolled her eyes at Spring Dash. Spring Dash's words carried some weight in the eyes of the others in Quanjun. However, Exquisite Dream didn't care at all. Exquisite Dream pointed her middle finger at Spring Dash, then raised her hand and shot an arrow at the god puppet's foot. The Shadowbind arrow didn't have much of an effect on the god puppet. The god puppet only paused for a moment. It didn't even look at Exquisite Dream. But this pause didn't matter, but Wang Yu's side was in trouble. Wang Yu and the god puppet fought back and forth, entering a state of mechanical numbness. Because of the god puppet's pause, Wang Yu was able to jump up before the god puppet's sword could reach him. Because the rhythm was a beat too fast, Wang Yu's two swords also deviated from their original trajectory. Bang! Chapter 644. The god's puppet's attack could even send a shield warrior like Yin Lao air flying, let alone a grandmaster of combat like Wang Yu. If not for the telekinesis barrier, Wang Yu would have turned into a white light. However, Wang Yu wasn't having a good time either. Although the telekinesis barrier had absorbed the damage, the impact was still there. Under the god's puppet's powerful attack, Wang Yu was sent flying into the wall in the distance. "Damn, Dream, look at what you've done!" Chun Xiang was furious when he saw Wang Yu being sent flying. Everyone knew that Wang Yu had a barrier that granted him 5 seconds of invincibility. However, Wang Yu had already lost his balance and was flying toward the wall. By the time he hit the wall, the 5 seconds of invincibility would most likely be over. Players who hit the wall or the ground in a weightless state would receive double damage. Wang Yu's HP was now in critical condition. There was no way he would survive after crashing into the wall. To make matters worse, Wang Yu was sent flying in the opposite direction from the rest of the team. No one could catch Wang Yu even if they wanted to. I don't know. Exquisite Dream was dumbfounded. She never thought that her assistance to Wang Yu would result in such a result. According to the script, Wang Yu should be grateful for her assistance. How could a difference of a few tenths of a second cause this to happen? Little did they know that the god's puppet was a powerful boss that current players couldn't deal with. Even an expert like Wuji could only last 2 rounds. If Wang Yu wasn't skilled in martial arts and the god's puppet wasn't an idiotic computer monster, how could Wang Yu have grasped its attack rhythm? In a battle of this level, there couldn't be the slightest mistake in every round. Forcefully helping the god's puppet was unnecessary. After all, compared to the god's puppet, Wang Yu was too weak. The slightest mistake could lead to a team wipe. In the future, don't do anything unless I tell you to. Everyone, spread out and try to stall for time. Chun Xiang glared at Ling Longmeng furiously before summoning his demons to stand in a crisscross formation in front of the statue. If Wang Yu died, the god's puppet's aggro would definitely shift to everyone else. Right now, all they could do was buy time for Mingjian Daoxue. Since none of them could withstand a single hit from the god's puppet, rather than attacking it together, they might as well go one by one. Hey, holy shit! Wang Yu was caught off guard by the sudden attack. He even cursed out loud. By the time he reacted, Wang Yu's head was already less than a meter away from the wall. Seeing that he was about to be strangled to death, Wang Yu's body swayed slightly, and his feet were suddenly surrounded by lightning. In the next moment, Wang Yu fell from midair with a duong sound. He stood firmly on the ground, and at the same time, his back leaned against the wall. Thunder stomp! Seeing Wang Yu's feet flash, and he landed safely, the Chuanjin members couldn't help but shout. He can even land in this kind of situation. As expected of the old cow. Since Grandmasters of Combat's jumping attacks had bonuses, it was very lively when Grandmasters of Combat fought with others. However, players couldn't fly, so it was difficult to control the distance between them when they jumped, and it was extremely easy for their opponents to exploit their weaknesses. Thus, using Eagle Stomp to forcefully land was a necessary quality for an expert Grandmaster of Combat. However, once a player was attacked in midair, they would enter a state of weightlessness. In gaming terms, weightlessness in midair was the effect of levitating. Under the effect of levitating, a player couldn't use any skills without first quick recover. Thus, even an expert Grandmaster of Combat who was proficient in landing would find it difficult to use Eagle Stomp to land without first quick recover after being attacked. The so-called quick recover was to adjust one's body's balance in midair, changing from a state of weightlessness to a state of combat. The difficulty of quick recover depended on the opponent's attack. Wang Yu had been hit by the god's puppet head-on, yet he could not only adjust his body's balance and complete quick recover in such a short time, but also manage to land with Thunder Stomp in time. With this kind of reaction speed and skill, if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, even the experts of Chuanjin wouldn't have believed that such a terrifying person existed in this world. After Wang Yu landed, he didn't understand why he was suddenly sent flying. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his head. He looked up and saw the god's puppet standing in the distance, raising its crossbow and shooting. Its other hands weren't idle either. Halos and ribbons of light all flew over. What was even more infuriating was that the god's puppet's last hand was holding a staff. It shook it slightly, and a beam of holy light fell down, restoring the god's puppet's HP to full. Chuanjin's members despaired when they saw this. Damn it, how could a saint-type monster be so disgusting? At this moment, Wang Yu didn't have the time to care about the god's puppet's shameless behavior. He dodged the god's puppet skills and scrambled to hide behind a sign on the wall. The sign was used to hang road signs. It was neither too big nor too small, just enough to hide Wang Yu. System mode's long-range attacks were always aimed. After the god's puppet lost its target, it immediately put away its long-range weapon and raised its massive shield. It bent over and charged at Wang Yu's hiding spot. Not good. Stop it. Chun Xiang shouted when he saw the god's puppet charging over. He ran forward and released a patch of thorns under the god's puppet's feet. The god's puppet's shield could even smash a hole in a wall. A small sign could only block its line of sight. It couldn't provide any protection at all. Following Chun Xiang's command, Yang Na, Mingdu, and the others followed suit. Exquisite Dream, in particular, shot shadowbind arrows at the god's puppet as if they were free. However, the god's puppet only paused for a moment in the face of their crowd control skills. It didn't stop them from successfully charging. Chun Xiang waved his staff and placed the demon in front of the god's puppet. He then ordered Mingdu, "Mingdu, use your ultimate skill. Pull its aggro." Mingdu activated his Berserk Thunder spell and landed on the god's puppet's head like a bucket of water. Boom! After a loud explosion, 4 words appeared above the god's puppet's head. Attack ineffective. **T. Mingdu was completely dumbfounded. The god's puppet stepped on Chun Xiang's demon and charged toward the sign without any resistance. Behind the sign, Wang Yu saw the god's puppet charge at him. He turned and dodged to the side. Unexpectedly, the god's puppet was an experienced driver. It could even turn while charging. Seeing Wang Yu run to the side, the god's puppet turned a corner and chased after him. The god's puppet's steps were huge. 1 step was equivalent to 5 steps for Wang Yu. At this time, Wang Yu couldn't shake it off even after activating his Qinggong. Instead, the god's puppet caught up to him in minute Seeing the god's puppet chasing after him, Wang Yu cursed in his heart. He suddenly turned around and flashed behind the god's puppet. Just when Wang Yu thought he was safe, the god's puppet turned its upper body 180 degrees and charged at Wang Yu with its shield. Chapter 645. Screw you! Wang Yu was instantly rendered speechless by the shamelessness of the system. It was one thing for him to be able to make a turn when he was charging. Even the experienced players could do it with their skills, but when he suddenly changed the direction of his charge, he had completely broken away from the shackles of inertia. Even Galileo's coffin couldn't hold him down anymore. Only a game would dare to do such a shameless thing. Seeing the god puppet charging at him, Wang Yu leaped into the air and used chain jump. His figure instantly rose several meters. Then, he took a step in the air and changed the direction of his jump. He reached out and grabbed onto the wall beside him. When the god puppet arrived in front of Wang Yu, it stopped abruptly and swung its shield at the wall. Seeing this, Wang Yu grabbed onto the wall and fell from it. The god puppet's attack missed. Before Wang Yu landed, the god puppet's crossguard sword swept towards him again. Wang Yu calmly released a telekinesis wave and used the recoil to stop in midair. Only then did he escape the fate of being cut in half. After Wang Yu landed, he was about to wipe the sweat off his forehead when the god puppet turned its arms and swung its spear, halo, and staff at him. Although the god puppet's attack speed wasn't very fast, it had many arms. Its 8 arms wielded 7 weapons and spun like a windmill, causing Wang Yu to roll on the ground and dodge. After this happened, the other members of Chuanjin didn't dare to help. Seeing how badly Wang Yu had been smashed, the members of Chuanjin couldn't do anything but point their fingers at Dream of Perfection. Dream of Perfection was filled with regret. She lowered her head and didn't dare to say anything. She also didn't dare to mention helping. Under the god puppet's attacks, Wang Yu complained inwardly and asked in the channel, "Damn, what happened just now? Why did I miss?" Wang Yu's calculations of the god's puppet's attacks were extremely accurate. As for why the god's puppet's attacks were slower by half a beat, it was probably a system issue. He would have to ask Quan Zhen and the others about it. Chun Xiang said gloomily, "It's all our fault, we couldn't help but hit him for you." Chun Xiang was quite loyal, and did not throw the blame to Exquisite Dream when faced with Wang Yu's questioning. "Oh, I see." Wang Yu recalled that the god's puppet had indeed blocked the other's attack. Wang Yu was also magnanimous. He didn't take Exquisite Dream's ploy to heart. Instead, he said, "Hurry up and attack him." "Attack him? Old cow, we know we're in the wrong. Don't be angry. At most, I won't do the mission." With the lesson just now, everyone knew the consequences of attacking recklessly. At this time, hearing Wang Yu's words, Mingdu thought that Wang Yu was angry, so he quickly apologized. "Angry at your brother-in-law? I'm not that narrow-minded. Hurry up," Wang Yu said anxiously. "But the attacks are ineffective," Mingdu said helplessly. Wang Yu said, "I know. Just attack him as much as you want." What are you waiting for? I told you to attack, so attack." While everyone was still hesitating, Exquisite Dream raised her hand and fired an arrow. Although Exquisite Dream didn't know what Wang Yu was planning, she felt guilty for setting Wang Yu up so badly. She couldn't disobey Wang Yu's command, so she took the initiative to attack. The arrow landed on the god's puppet's shadow, causing it to pause slightly. The god's puppet paused for only a moment, but Wang Yu had already used quick recover and stood up from the ground. At this time, everyone understood what was going on. Wang Yu wanted to use others to interrupt the god's puppet's attack rhythm. In the face of a god's puppet, the slightest pause was negligible to ordinary people. However, to Wang Yu, every pause was a flaw. Thinking of this, Chun Xiang, Mingdu, and Yang Na attacked the god's puppet. However, the god's puppet's aggro was on Wang Yu, so it ignored everyone else. After a round of attacks, only Exquisite Dream's arrow at the beginning was effective. What's going on? Mingdu and Yang Na were surprised. Chun Xiang rubbed his chin and said, Little Dream, that arrow was a control skill, right? And Exquisite Dream nodded. That's right. We have to use control skills to disrupt the boss's rhythm, Chun Xiang explained. Mingdu gloomily said, Damn, control skills have such a long cooldown, and we only have 4 long-range attackers. How are we supposed to fight it? Chun Xiang reminded, This boss isn't something a team can kill in the first place. The god's puppet was a boss in a large-scale dungeon. If 100 people took turns using control skills, they could definitely kill it. This guy's strengths were obvious, but his weaknesses were even more obvious. If they didn't find the right way to kill it, they wouldn't be able to. What do we do now? Yang Na asked. Exquisite Dream said, Leave it to me. My control skills aren't on cooldown. Saying this, Exquisite Dream raised her crossbow and fired Shadowbind arrow after Shadowbind arrow. This slight pause wasn't very effective once or twice, but after using it too many times, the god's puppet's movements became noticeably strange. It was like a network that was lagging. With Exquisite Dream disrupting the god's puppet's attacks, Wang Yu gradually took the initiative and controlled the rhythm. When Wang Yu had blocked and counterattacked, the god's puppet had been in control of the rhythm. Now that Wang Yu had taken the initiative, the rhythm fell to Wang Yu. As a result, Wang Yu's damage output was many times faster than before. One hit after another landed on the god's puppet's vitals. A string of crimson numbers floated above the god's puppet's head. Wang Yu's damage output simply couldn't stop. System monsters had a fixed rhythm and thought process. As Wang Yu continued to attack, the god's puppet didn't show any signs of trouble. 60%, 50%, 30%, no berserk, 10%, 1%. Half an hour later, the god's puppet finally collapsed to the ground. System notification. Guardian successful. Quest completion rate plus 40%. Dungeon completion rate 110%. Evaluation. S+. Seeing the system notification, Wang Yu breathed a long sigh of relief. He then slumped to the ground in exhaustion. Although Wang Yu was attacking to his heart's content, he still needed to focus. Wang Yu hadn't logged off for an entire day. Playing the game for an entire day was very tiring. In addition, the god's puppet's long HP bar was more than enough to destroy Wang Yu's mind. With the death of the god's puppet, Exquisite Dream's tense heartstrings relaxed. She touched her empty backpack and felt incomparably relaxed. Chapter 646. How was it? Exciting, right? Chun Xiang asked with a smile when he saw Exquisite Dream's expression. Chun Xiang and Linglong Meng had known each other for the longest time. He knew that even though this girl had a vile character, she was a daring lady. If Wang Yu really died this time, this lady would definitely fork out her own money to compensate everyone. Of course, just because she would pay for it didn't mean that she was willing to. The ups and downs of this battle had taught Exquisite Dream a lesson. Humph! Exquisite Dream turned her head and ignored Chun Xiang. She walked over to Wang Yu and said, Thank you. ? Wang Yu's face was filled with confusion. What do you mean? Exquisite Dream smiled and said, Let's start the boss. Yes, let's start the boss. Hearing Exquisite Dream say this, the others became excited. These guys had been doing nothing the entire time. Only Wang Yu and Exquisite Dream were risking their lives. At this time, they could only focus on the boss. Old cow, you open it. Exquisite Dream pointed at the god's golem. Wang Yu waved his hand and said, I need to rest. You open it. All right. Exquisite Dream nodded and walked over to the god's golem. Mingdu, Chun Xiang, and the others didn't have any objections to Wang Yu's decision. After all, the boss was killed by the two of them. In terms of contribution, the god's golem belonged to the two of them. The others didn't even have the right to get a share. At this time, besides Mingdu, The ones who were the most excited were Yin Lao Er and Chun Xiang. This was because the god's golem was a holy type boss, which suited Chun Xiang's class. Anything that dropped would definitely be useful to Chun Xiang. Moreover, the god's golem was more of a warrior type. Whether it was the cross blade or the giant shield, they were both suitable for tanks, especially the giant shield. Yin Lao Er, who had just lost his shield, was already drooling. Drop warlock equipment, drop warlock skills. Chun Xiang stared at the god puppet and muttered to himself with his arms crossed, looking like a charlatan. Bao San couldn't help but ask, "Brother Chun, what are you doing?" "Pray," said Chun Xiang. F***ck, as a follower of God, you helped these heretics kill God's high-level follower, and you're still praying for God to let you loot good equipment? Do you really think God is stupid? Bao San sneered. What do you know? I'm praying to the three pure ones, Chun Xiang said. Bao San was speechless. Damn. You'll go to hell for being so two-faced. Such a big boss. If it can drop my items, it'll be worth it even if I go to hell. Chun Xiang rolled his eyes at Bao San and continued to mutter. Yin Lao Er said thoughtfully, Brother Chun is right. What's there to be afraid of in hell? Drop the shield, drop the shield. As he said that, Yin Lao Er also cupped his fists and joined in the prayer. They've drawn their weapons. As the two of them prayed, Exquisite Dream pulled out a radiant weapon from the god puppet's body. It was as if the two of them had summoned a god. The weapon Exquisite Dream pulled out was actually a shield. Divine Shield, dark gold, damaged, upgradable, attack, 140-150 mana, 140-150 physical defense, 300-300 magic resist, 300-300 strength plus 60 vitality plus 60 durability, 1000000 divine protection, passive skill. Max HP increased by 3000. HP/MP recovery speed increased by 300%. Divine protection, passive skill. Max block value increased by 100%. Physical defense and magic resist increased by 30%. While blocking, recover 1% block value, HP, and MP every second. Divine Vengeance, active skill. Reflect 30% damage when off. Reflect 80% damage when on. Heavenly God's Descent, active skill. Transforms into a heavenly god, increasing all attributes by 100% for 30 seconds. Cooldown, 180 minute. Heals 5% of block value every second in Heavenly God's Descent. All attacks contain holy magic bonuses, doubling the power of holy class skills, and reducing damage against holy class skills by 20%. Class requirement. Knight Warrior level requirement. 60 item description. A holy object brought down from the heavens. It possesses incredible power. It seems to be slightly damaged, but that doesn't stop it from being a peerless godly item. When Exquisite Dream revealed the Divine Shield stats, everyone was stunned for a few seconds. Holy *T. Holy *T. This is a godly item. Mingdu exclaimed in shock and envy. Looking at the main attributes of the shield, apart from the dissatisfied value, all other attributes of the shield were full. Of course, as a defensive weapon like the shield, a high or low attack value didn't matter. As long as the defense value was in place, it was fine. Therefore, this shield could be said to be a weapon with full attribute. As for the 4 skills, they were even more overpowered. Block value was the most important attribute for a shield warrior. Tank equipment that increased block value had always been priceless, especially for a rare weapon like a shield. A shield that increased block value was even more difficult to find. This was no exaggeration at all. At that moment, not only did the god's shield increase the block value by 100%, but it also had the block value recovery attribute. In addition to God's Descent, the shield-bearer who equipped the shield would have 3 times the block value of an ordinary shield-bearer. If a guardian knight equipped this shield, Their block value would be 4 times the block value of an ordinary shield warrior if their skills were doubled. This showed the usefulness of this shield. For a tank profession, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a godly item. This shield could only be used at level 60. If there were no accidents, it could be used until the player reached level 100. Moreover, this shield was damaged. Although damaged equipment had the word damaged in it, it was not trash. This was because there was room for improvement in equipment with the word damaged. Take Wang Yu for example, there were quite a few damaged pieces of equipment on him, especially his weapons. Wang Yu had been using them since he was in the novice village. The value of damaged equipment did not solely lie in the increase in stat. Due to the difference in stats and skills, players would feel different when using a piece of equipment. After using a piece of equipment for a long time, players would become dependent on the equipment. They would also become familiar with the equipment's skills. If they encountered a piece of equipment with better stats, they would have to familiarize themselves with it again. Damaged equipment, on the other hand, would keep up with the times because of the increase in stat. Therefore, the value of damaged equipment was higher than many high-level equipment. Players classified it as equipment that could grow. The value of an exquisite shield that could grow was self-evident. Including all the professional players, it was likely that they would not be able to find a shield with better stats than this shield. When Yin Lao Er saw the stats of the divine shield, he was so happy that he almost fainted. He rushed over and almost knelt down to beg, "Sister, give this shield to me." Chapter 647. Thank you, Sister Meng. How much is this shield? Yin Lao Er took the shield and carefully put it in his bag. Then, he began to count the gold coins. Putting aside the rarity of such a shield, its attributes alone were worth at least 5,000 to 6,000 gold. Since they had scammed Xiaobing's workshop, the members of the Quanzhen sect were not short of money. They still had plenty of gold coins. Wang Yu said, "Don't worry about money. Didn't I say that it will be distributed according to class? There are no other shield warriors in the team, so you can take it." Is this appropriate? Second Elder Yin looked at Linglong Meng, feeling a little overwhelmed by the favor. Although they were in the same team, strictly speaking, the boss was fought by Wang Yu and Exquisite Dream. The others had no right to take anything. Wang Yu gave the shield to Yin Lao Er according to class, so Yin Lao Er did not dare to take it. After all, Wang Yu's side was easy to deal with. After all, they were brothers, and they could help each other in the future. As for Linglong Meng, old Tu Yin was not familiar with her at all. Moreover, Linglong Meng's actions just now had really angered him. If old Tu Yin really wanted her for free, he was afraid that Linglong Meng would have a problem with it, and it would make things difficult for Wang Yu. Exquisite Dream pointed at Wang Yu and said, "He killed the boss, so he can give it to whoever he wants. But it's so valuable, how can I?" Yin Lao Er still found it difficult to refuse. At this time, Chun Xiang smiled and said, "Alright, second bro, just take it. We are all brothers, so don't say anything else." Chun Xiang knew Exquisite Dream's character. He knew that Exquisite Dream was only helping to atone for her sins. She would not ask about the items that the boss dropped. "In that case, I'll accept it. If you need my help in the future, just call me." Yin Lao Er nodded and said calmly, "TSK. Second bro is really lucky." Seeing Linglong Meng give the shield to Yin Lao Er just like that, everyone was filled with envy. They didn't have to do anything but pick up a divine artifact for free. This was something that everyone dreamed of. "Auntie Meng, give me a piece of Grandmaster of Combat equipment," to place one's pride said. "Tisk." Everyone laughed in disdain. "Do you think it's your turn to loot a Grandmaster of Combat's equipment?" Chuanzhen had 2 Grandmasters of Combat, and the boss was fought by Wang Yu. There was no reason to let to place one's pride pick the good equipment first. Then I'll just touch the Grandmaster of Combat's gear from now on. I'm so cute, I don't believe that Uncle Nyo won't leave one for me, to place one's pride said shamelessly. Hearing this, everyone laughed and scolded. F***ck off, you shameless brat. Only to place one's pride could say such childish words to such a big boss that dropped all Grandmaster of Combat equipment. Say, why did you come out? At this moment, Wang Yu suddenly asked to place one's pride. This brat should be in the library with famous sword Daoxue right now, ravaging Regis. Once the boss died, Regis became a functional NPC that can't be attacked. What are we still doing in there? To place one's pride said. Oh? There's actually such a thing? Hearing to place one's pride say this, everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Functional NPCs were NPCs that had no intelligence and were protected by the system. These NPCs would only do what they were supposed to do, and the quests that they issued were all low-level quests. After the god puppet died, Regis became a functional NPC and lost the ability to hide quests and obtain rewards. In this way, it was fortunate that everyone had tricked him before this, or else they would have been tricked by the system. Did you touch the last shard? This. I didn't touch it. Old Li, I don't think you'll be able to complete your quest. Famous sword Daoxue said shamefully. Mingdu said indifferently, forget it. If I didn't touch it, then I didn't touch it. I can't even draw the work dedication card during the new year. Hey, Old Li, have you learned something today? He used to. Hearing Mingdu's words, everyone was in disbelief. This brat would rather die than suffer a loss. He didn't complete his quest, but he was still so calm. Something wasn't right. As expected, before everyone finished speaking, Mingdu immediately said, in order to comfort my wounded heart, Old Dream will find a staff later. Brother Chun, don't fight with me over it. F***ck. I knew it. Everyone pointed their middle fingers at him. So this grandson was waiting for them here. It couldn't be helped. Yin Lao Heir's shield was too exquisite. It wasn't just Mingdu. The others also hoped to get their own equipment next time, even if it wasn't broken. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Exquisite Dream laughed and pulled out another shining equipment. Knight's Valor, Helmet, Set, Physical Defense, 120-130 Magic Resistance, 120 to 130 plus 47 Strength plus 54 Vitality Class Requirement, Guardian Exclusive Level Requirement, 60 Knights Set 1 out of 8 Knights Valor 1 to 1 Knights Integrity 0 to 1 Knights Humility 0 to 1 Knights Pity 0 to 1 Knights Justice 0 to 1 Knights Sacrifice 0 to 1 Knights Honor 0 to 1 Knights Soul 0 to 1 Set Attributes Fearless. Passive Skill, Defense increased by 100% Protect the Weak. Passive Skill, Protection Aura Range increased by 50% Righteous Loyalty. Passive Skill, Holy Skill Effect increased by 50% Die Rather Surrender. Passive Skill, 80% chance of reviving after death. Cooldown, 240 minutes. Hidden Set Attributes. Unknown Item Description. Only the noblest of knights can equip this set. It's the legendary 8-piece set. After seeing the attributes of the helmet in Exquisite Dream's hands, the Chuanjian people cried out. Equipment sets were also divided into high and low levels. The most direct way to evaluate the value of an equipment set was by looking at the number of pieces in the set. The lowest level was a 2-piece set, while the highest was an 8-piece set. An 8-piece set covered all the parts except for the weapon and the necklace. After gathering all the pieces, the set's attributes were no weaker than a full set of divine equipment. Even during the game's closed beta, people only speculated that the highest level set was an 8-piece set. However, no one had actually seen one. Currently, 4-piece sets were the majority in the market, while 6-piece sets were rare. A quasi-divine equipment and an 8-piece set. The God Puppet's first attempt was truly a huge success. Of course, although the 8-piece set's attributes were powerful, it was also a waste of manpower and money to gather all 8 pieces. What a pity, it's useless. Everyone shook their heads. It was not easy to get an 8-piece set, but it turned out to be a F*King Knight. Mu Zetian was the only knight in Chuanjin, and she was currently only level 15. They reckoned that her chances of reaching level 60 were not much higher than the chances of gathering all 8 pieces. It's not really useless. At least I can sell it for money. Wang Yu smiled as he put away Knight's Valor. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.